Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
What is going on, everyone? Happy Friday and welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We've got a packed show to get to. Coming off kind of a disappointing night for hockey fans around here. Jets losing in overtime to the Anaheim Ducks. And Team Canada bounced in the quarters on home ice at the World Junior Hockey Championship. Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. We'll do a bit of an autopsy on Canada's failure at the World Juniors and some big questions about management, about coaching, about who was on the team. So we'll dive into all of that. And then some big-time topics to get to with Murat coming up. The Jets, this homestand, and how this team might alter the roster going forward, and a very interesting name that was thrown up by Frank Saravelli, which we'll talk about coming up as well. And, of course, we've got the final weekend of the NFL season, getting ready for this massive Sunday nighter between the Lions and the Vikings for first place in the NFC and a bye next week and home field throughout the NFC playoffs. It's Friday. You know what that means. Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. And then a marble race to set you off on the weekend. It should be a fun one. Great to have you all with us. Shout out to everybody in chat right now. And just before we bring in Michael Remis, a huge thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Don't forget, Canada is out, but you can still get in on the ultimate 50-50 draw. Go to hockeymanitoba.myshopify.com. Get your tickets before Sunday night when the final third draw will be made. Of course, 50% of the pot goes to the winner and 50% to grassroots hockey initiatives right here in the province of Manitoba. Also want to thank Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Rollies Transfer, Manitoba Battery, the Winnipeg Jets, Wallace & Wallace, Canadian Club, fansfirst.ca, F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and we got a doozy for you for today's Why Not question of the day, brought to you by Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGilvery. Let's get this show on the road and get Michael Remis in here. Remo, what's up? How's the temperature back at the ranch?
Yeah, a little off-air conversation as I'm sitting here in a hoodie, long underwear. I went to go to bed last night at 12, close to 1, and realized, oh no, my heat's not on. So I had to make a call, had someone come out at 2:30, and just before we went live, the heat is fixed. So I'm feeling a lot better now. I'm in my wife says I shouldn't wear this Adidas tracksuit hoodie. Says I look, says not a great look, but I don't care. It's about function, not fashion today.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not a bad look. I guess you could have worn the WST, but you're rocking the hat too, so
I got the hat. Yeah.
No need to double it up. So, anyways, I'm glad that heat has been restored, and
right.
We can get on with the show. Listen, we're going to talk lots about the World Juniors coming up with Stephen Ellis at the bottom of the hour. So we will start off with the Winnipeg Jets, and the freaking Ducks did it again. A late comeback. Radko Gudas, of all people, with his first goal of the season, tying the game after Alex Iafallo had just put the Jets up with just 2.5 minutes left to break a tie. And then a pretty fun overtime that saw some good chances both ways. Nikolai Ehlers in on a breakaway, unable to convert. And then after Cole Perfetti took it hard to the net, disjarring the net, and everyone was waiting for the whistle to blow. The whistle never blew. And Troy Terry came down, iced the game on a 2-on-1, beating Connor Hellebuck, depriving Helly of his 300th win. He'll get the opportunity to do that against his childhood team, the Detroit Red Wings, tomorrow night. But, this was not a terrible performance by the Jets. I was actually pretty impressed with the Ducks and the way they hung around. I thought John Gibson was good. This could have gotten away on the Ducks after the Jets had a nice start. We're up 2-0. But they did get a pretty good run of fortune, certainly with that first goal. A deflection that went off the post, off Connor Hellebuck's back and in, gave them a little bit of life. They ended up tying the game later on. And it was a little bit of a dry spell for the Jets midway through the game. But a nice push at the end But again, just unable to hold that lead. For the most part, the Jets have been really good last night. I thought they probably deserved to win the game over 82. That's not going to always be the case. And the Jets get 1 point, which is certainly better than losing in regulation. We think back to how that late blown lead stung so much when these two teams played a couple weeks ago in Anaheim. But they do get 1 point. Unfortunately for the Jets, though, they end up losing a point last night to the Avalanche, to the Stars, and the Minnesota Wild, who all won last night. And the Avalanche storming back from a couple big deficits again against the Buffalo Sabres to win 6-5. So not a great start to the homestand, but certainly a game that the Jets can move on for and get ready to play the second of 8 straight at home tomorrow night against the Wings. What were your thoughts on the Jets coming away with only one of 2 points that were expected by most, I think?
Yeah, I think a disappointing result has losing 2 this season to the Anaheim Ducks in last-second fashion. I remember the one in Anaheim and again yesterday. I think Radko Gudas was listening to the show us. He didn't like how you referred to him as a psycho in your conversation with Dennis Bernstein. And he was like...
He is a psycho, and he's a psycho that I'd love to have on my blue line, to be perfectly honest with you.
He's like, you think I'm just a meathead that blocks shots and can hit people? I can score 2. And, that was... he got it through from the point and, had the other shot that was tipped in as well. The Ducks, man, it's funny, we talk about teams rebuilding. We got a good look at the Sharks. Last week, they gave the Jets a bit of a run for 2 periods. The Ducks have given the Jets some trouble. The Sharks and Ducks look like teams that have young players. We saw Leo Carlsson yesterday. Troy Terry, not as young, but he scored.
Carlson's going to be a stud.
He's very good, and they got Celebrini for the Blackhawks. They have Bedard, and we talked about how miserable their season has been. But the Ducks, nice game for them. I think Jets, up 2-0. You got to find a way to put them away. We did see some flip-flopping of the lines. Lowry, who scored, swapping the Messikov. They got to get something more here, Huss, from this second line at 5-on-5. I feel like the well has dried up a little for them over the last couple of games. It's the Scheifele, Velarde, Connor line that's been doing a lot of the scoring, and they showed that on the broadcast, the most scoring of any trio in the NHL. But, they got the one quickly, and Iafallo, helped chip in for 2 others. He's played really well since moving up from Mason Appleton. But the secondary scoring, they maybe get a bit more. But they got 3. Usually that's enough. Unfortunately, it wasn't yesterday.
Yeah, you mentioned Alex Iafallo. He's been playing so well lately. Scoring what we all hoped, I think, was going to be the winning goal with 2.5 minutes left. But that pass that he made to Adam Lowry and the captain with a finish that would make the best goal scorers in the league blush, an absolute snipe to the top corner on that one-timer. Such a nice goal. But, you are right. This has been, man, we could probably go back to last year at this exact same time having a very similar conversation about what's going to happen with the number 2 center. What can the Jets do with their blue line? We'll talk about a lot of that coming up with Murat. But listen, before we may as well get to this right now, because we will hear from Scott Arniel and Josh Morrissey and a little bit about Alex Iafallo. But when talking about the second line center, we've talking about Brock Nelson and some guys that could potentially be available. There's also one name that has been mentioned on this program a number of times in sort of a what-if scenario. We've heard for the first time that there might be some legs to a Jonathan Toews comeback. And Frank Saravelli reported yesterday that the Jets are one of 3 teams that are interested in Jonathan Toews. Now, listen, I will just say this right off the bat. If Jonathan Toews is anywhere close to the Jonathan Toews that, he was, and I'm not even talking about in his prime, like winning cups, but, in his last couple of years, and again, this was at a time where he was dealing with a lot of stuff. If he's back, if he's healthy, this is a guy that I think can help you win hockey games. And, you want to talk about playoff experience and moxie and a 200-foot game. He checks off all those boxes. Obviously, he's a Winnipeg guy, too, and there'd be an interesting angle to that story. But anyways, let's first off, we'll talk about this. I'm interested to get your thoughts on the in Fans First fan feedback. But here's Frank Saravelli on the latest on Jonathan Toews and potential interest from the Winnipeg Jets and other NHL teams.
There's no shortage of teams whose interest was piqued over the holidays when Toews detailed his 5-week healing journey in India, as he's been suffering from chronic inflammatory response disorder. And so he's feeling the best that he has in years, and hinted in that story that he might want to resume his NHL career. Well, I can tell you that at this point, Jonathan Toews has indeed resumed skating. He's feeling the best that he has in years, and he's also back down to his playing weight. I'm told that multiple teams expressed interest in Toews, a potential return to his agent in Paterson from CAA Sports. They're not entirely sure yet as to whether or not Toews might try and resume playing this year, in which case he'd have to be on a team's reserve list by the trade deadline on March 7th, or if this is something that will wait until next year. But Andy, I'm going to give you 3 teams to keep an eye on if Jonathan Toews does decide to make a comeback bid. One of them is the Toronto Maple Leafs. A third-line center has been on Brad Treliving's wish list all season long. The other would be the Winnipeg Jets, the hometown team for Jonathan Toews. And the third would be the Colorado Avalanche, in desperate need of another center. 3 true legitimate Stanley Cup contenders, all of whom would be interested to see what the 3-time Stanley Cup winner and one of the most clutch players of his generation would still have left in the tank.
So there you have it from Frank Saravelli, a potential Jonathan Toews comeback, and 3 teams mentioned: the Leafs, the Jets, and the Avalanche. I got to tell you, the thought of Toews coming in healthy, rejuvenated onto this Jets roster is a really exciting one, and not just because he's from here, although that would be a cool side part to it. This guy is a 3-time Stanley Cup champion. He is a Conn Smythe winner. He is a guy that, the one thing that this team doesn't have a lot of is, cup rings, playoff experience, and a guy that can do it all, especially at playoff time. So I don't know about you, Reem. I saw that yesterday. I thought, well, I have a feeling that everyone in the chat will have something to say on this. So we'll fire out the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Down to you all. What's your reaction to that report from Frank Saravelli, and would you be in on getting Jonathan Toews? The other thing that would be, if the Jets could get him, the fact that the Avalanche was the other team mentioned, I think is a scary thought. If Toews is anywhere close to what he was during his heyday in the National Hockey League, and the Leafs are mentioned on everyone, so take that for what it's worth. But what did you think when you heard that from Frank, and where are you at on the prospect of a guy like Toews coming in? Other great part about it, Reem, is he's a free agent. This is not something that would cost you, any assets to get him in. But where are you at on it?
Yeah, looking at Jonathan Toews, 36 years old, turning 37 at the end of April. His last season in the NHL, 2022-23, had 31 points in 53 games. The season before, 21-22, 37 and 71, 19-20, 60 and 70. He's almost point per game, 81-82 and 18-19, which feels like yesterday, but is actually 6 years ago now, which blows my mind every day. But anyways, Jonathan Toews, my thought was, is he capable of being the second line center the Jets need? I did see a comment here from someone. Toews, isn't really what the Jets need, but you definitely want him on the team. They mentioned Toronto wanting him to play third line center. Well, the Jets if the Jets did get him, would you need another person for your second line center? Would he be the second line center? Would he be the third line center and push Lowry down to a fourth line and you look for someone? So I guess if you did get him now, he was all you had, you would probably put him in at second line. I'm not sure if he's going to be, the 60-point guy is, in 1920. I definitely like the story aspect that he's from Winnipeg, that he's won 3 Stanley Cups, that he's won gold medals at, juniors. We're going to talk about that soon, and Olympics as well. So, yeah, I think you're certainly interested. And I don't think it would cost a lot. As the Jets' current cap space, $3.8 million, but he's going to end up signing, a prorated deal. And I don't know what it would be if there's teams interested. Maybe there is some type of bidding war. But yeah, they should definitely be interested. But I think I don't know if it's like a must, because I don't know if he fills that need of second line center. That seems to be the number one priority. Seems to be more of a want than a need. Like, it would be great, but is that all? If that's the only guy you're getting, does that propel you towards the Stanley Cup?
It all depends on where he's at, his health, and how much he has left in him. And I don't think that's a question that any of us can answer. I mean, for the people that say outright he could not be that guy, I'll push back on that. Mm-hmm. I mean, and again, like, we're not talking about a 40-year-old player here. We're talking about a guy, what did you say, 36? I mean, and hasn't played in a few years. We kind of talked about the extensive healing journey that he went through. And I mean, I still really don't truly understand everything that he's been through, but it was something that was on the verge of costing him his career. And now he's back feeling great, could be rejuvenated. Listen, if he is anywhere close to the player that he was when he was, in Chicago, even in the final few years, I think that would be a significant upgrade, over Vlad Nemetstikov right now, playing with Ehlers and Cole Perfetti. And again, there could be some more changes as well. I'm interested in what everyone thinks, and man, we've got a lot coming in for fan feedback. So listen, get your thoughts in on that. We'll before Stephen Ellis comes in, we'll look forward to kind of cranking out a few of your takes on all of this. But let's get back to last night's game and hear a little bit from the coach, Scott Arniel. Jets were up 2-0. Didn't end up coming out with 2 points, and that is a rarity for the Winnipeg Jets this year. Here's Scott Arniel on what happened after they went up by 2.
Yeah, I thought our second period was probably our worst period. I thought the first we were great. We had all kinds of opportunities and got the lead, and then second period we really kind of, through the neutral zone, turned some pucks over, kind of let them get in some rush situations, and and the third went out and dominated the third, and we got the lead again late, and gave up that one. So there's a little bit of that. I think a little bit of the mental side of things. 4 and 6, not using it as an excuse, but when you start seeing those kind of mistakes, it has to drop into there somehow.
Yeah, I'm with Arnie on his observations. I mean, I thought the team came out really well. They had that lead, and then very quickly in the second period, the Ducks battled back in, and then they got it back together in that third period. I thought Iafallo in particular, great game, awesome goal to go up by 1, and then they just weren't able to hold it. And again, it was the Ducks that came back and did it. Arnie was asked what it is about the Ducks that allowed them to come back twice against the Jets and come away with 2 wins in their last 2 games.
They're a young group that's got a lot of speed. They transition really well. Kind of watched them do it against Edmonton and New Jersey this last week, and if you're going to make mistakes, they're going to capitalize. And I think there's a young team that's had some veterans. They're trying to, they're trying to play a certain way. And tonight, I thought just we fed them with some of the mistakes we made, gave them some opportunities.
All right, so there's Scott Arniel. We got one more from the coach, and then we're going to talk some World Juniors with Stephen Ellis coming up in just a couple minutes. Here's Scott Arniel on the play of Alex Iafallo and him moving up to the third line in the absence of Mason Appleton, and a few other topics getting peppered by our local media.
You need that. Obviously, he's been pretty patient. He's done it last year for us, but he's been patient this year. And whenever I've needed him, he's jumped in and done the job, and that's what he needs to do now. And that was a big goal that he scored.
Scott, what went into the center flip for the third, and what did you see from
that
both
was
lines?
They're just face-offs. It was. 2 reasons. One was the face-off allow kids to get so that Fly and Fetz could start with the puck a little bit more. Then secondly, that also put Lau in a situation. We had the puck and it was a lot in their end. I wanted him around the front of the net, being a big body, and so it was kind of then Vladdy to go with those other guys. I thought they were good too. Obviously scored a big goal, but it was just kind of trying to get some size there on that line.
And then on the OT winner, do you think the net being off caused any confusion at all with the rush?
No, that's the league rule. That's the rushing team, the attacking team knocks the net off. obviously the team, the defending, has a chance to take off and go, and that's the rules.
All right, so no complaints from the head coach about the sort of strange circumstances around the OT winner with the net being clearly off back in the Anaheim zone. Here's just one more quick clip. Alex Iafallo, one of the top players on the Jets last night, talk about what happened when they got up 2-0 and the play of his line.
I just think we didn't have enough pressure, moving forward, and kind of a roller coaster every game. And at that point, we just gotta, grind it out and get pucks deep and keep pressuring.
What do you think the way your line went after the center switch for the third?
It was good. We had good pressure down low. That's kind of what we talked about. Just trying to, get pucks on the forecheck and get to the net. You never know what happens, off a shot or, a tip. So that's just kind of what we were doing.
All right, there's AI last night. We'll have more from Josh Morrissey a little bit later on in the program. But we are going to get to the World Juniors right away. Before we do that, speaking of World Juniors, I mentioned it off the top. You can still get in the final ultimate 50-50 draw for the World Juniors. Draw is January 5th. Head on over. The Hockey Manitoba website will have a link, but there's a link in the description of this video. And if you're listening on the podcast and when you get your tickets, hockeymanitoba.myshopify.com. Final draw coming up on Sunday after the gold medal game. As we get into 2025, gang, if you have a move coming up for you and your family this year, probably a lot going into it, maybe a little bit of stress involved, our friends at Rolly's Transfer can help you, just as they've been helping Winnipeggers and Manitobans for over 60 years. Family owned and operated as the most trusted name in moving services in the province. With their extensive logistics business, they're around the province on a daily basis. Southern Manitoba, Winnipeg, which means flexible routes, flexible timing, and great rates on your next move. Get the white glove treatment from Rolly's when you are moving to your next destination. Head on over to their website at rollys.com. Click on that request an estimate feature. Make sure you put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies. Let them know when and where you're moving and what needs to go. And the friendly staff at Rolly's will turn it around quickly with a great rate, a quote, and get you set up for that next move. Moving in 2025, get the white glove treatment from Rolly's. Find out more, request an estimate today over at rollys.com. I don't need to tell you, gang, that we're into January here in Winnipeg, and it's getting cold. The next couple of weeks are going to be ugly. Is your car or your truck ready to go to get through it? You better make sure, and Manitoba Battery is ready to help you with the best prices in town, period, on batteries of all makes and models, shapes and sizes, beating the pants off the big box stores. If you are concerned about maybe one of your loved ones being able to make it through, check out something like the NOCO 1000 amp booster pack to get you through the winter. Or make sure you got those booster cables, 25-footers available as well. And, of course, they've got other great things like the ice fishing flasher battery or that battery for that sled that you might need to replace. It's all waiting for you. 2 locations, Logan Avenue, Dover Court Drive. But check out everything they've got at manitobabattery.com, and you can order from the comfort of your home with free delivery anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. For all your battery needs, Manitoba Battery, your local option. Check them out today at manitobabattery.com. And hey, speaking of the new year, new you, how about new wardrobe? Guys, if you want to up your menswear game, get on down to F Apparel, Winnipeg's #1 spot for custom men's clothing, including custom suits starting at just $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and the best selection of menswear accessories in town. See them in person at 190 Smith Street or check them out online at EPHapparel.com. You can also set up a time to come in for a fitting and let the fellas at F take care of you. Again, FApparel.com, 190 Smith Street. Tell them the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. All right, World Juniors. We have a lot to get to after Canada's loss to the Czechs last night, and it is always a pleasure to welcome in our pal Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff, who joins us now on WST. Stephen, what's going on? How are you?
Whew, what a night that was last night. Let's put it that way, man. Watching watching that crowd and seeing how they reacted, and it was, the Canada-USA game was quite special, being in that building with the crowd, though, as much fun as it was. But once Canada got close to that third goal and then eventually did get that third goal, everything just seemed to change in that building. And you thought, okay, maybe this is how Canada finally gets back on track. And then they took a penalty, and then we saw what happened.
Yeah, penalties. I mean, God, we could talk about the lack of discipline on this team for 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, it was something that never really changed, and it was killing them throughout the entire tournament. And in some ways, it's almost appropriate that this tournament ended the way that it did for Canada, in the fashion that it did with one of their players in the penalty box at a crucial time in the game with their life on the line.
Yeah, they're the only team with over 100 penalty minutes in this tournament. They by far have the most shorthanded moments in general, because there were some offsetting moments. I think you can look at it and say, the reffing wasn't great. And there were a lot of bad examples in this tournament of some poor reffing. The consistency factor, I think, for me, was how one player can get a 5-minute major at the start of the game, and then a very similar incident, if that player doesn't get a 5-minute major, gets a 2-minute penalty. Both of those hits with Cole Beaudoin and Andrew Gibson, you could talk about in the NHL, probably weren't going to be penalties. It was shoulder-on-shoulder contact, and then knees ended up again there. But the players know the rules, and in the end, my big issue with those two were how they were called. But they were both penalties under IHF rules. The players knew that, and we saw all tournament long that Canada just struggled to stay out of the penalty box, more so than I think we've ever seen from any team at this tournament.
The autopsy on this one is going to take a little while, but we'll get to the making of the team in a minute, because I think that's a bigger conversation and one that's not going to stop in a couple days. But the way this team was managed, if you want to have a laugh, just type in Dave Cameron right now on X and see what people are saying. They canceled practice twice. They canceled the morning skate. Like, for a team that probably needed to work on things and focus, it seems like they did a lot of the opposite things that I think common sense would tell you. Like, how much is this on the coaching staff before we even get to the guys that built this team?
Well, first off, I've been spending all day building my 2026 roster already. It's going to be a good team. Look at this. When I look at Team Canada, and I've been saying this from the very get-go, from the start of selection camp, this was a good team. This was just not good execution. This was not good coaching. Like, Porter Martone and Carson Rakoff not playing a minute together when they make up 2/3 of one of the best lines in junior hockey, that's a mistake. Porter Martone and Gavin McKenna were also downright dominant at the U18s, where they are first and second in single tournament scoring in Canadian history when they just won gold. They also played 0 minutes together. Porter Martone sat 2 games, comes in, scores. Now, a tip goal, sure. Maybe he didn't generate a ton else otherwise, but the player usage there was just such a big question, and people will look at the guys who weren't here. And in reality, like, you can't change that. You have to be able to react. And if we're looking at this, just about every scout I talked to looked at Canada being the deepest team in the tournament, and it's hard to disagree with there. There's something like over 20 NHL drafted prospects. Only one other team could say that's the United States. And then you're still talking about the guys who aren't drafted. All of them are going to be first-round picks in the next 2 years. Like, that's still pretty special. Canada not taking someone like Michael Remis made the headlines here, but that's not as big of a deal as Czechia leaving off their best defenseman, Dominik Badinka, because he and the coach have had disagreements. Like, that should have hurt them a lot more than leaving off a guy who scores a lot of goals, because you look at, like, Luca Pinelli, a lot of people question his inclusion. He's on pace for over 50 goals in the OHL this year, too. Like, this is not a team that should have struggled to score, but they did.
What about just the way that they handled it? Like, it seemed strange. You lose to Latvia, you cancel practice. You lose to the States, you cancel practice. They weren't even on the ice before a game that meant everything to surviving in it. It just seemed to be managed in a very strange way. It's the best way I can describe it.
I'd say the practice thing has been really overblown. I think the fact that they didn't practice 2 days in a row was an odd decision, and then the reason for it being that they were too tired, that was kind of a stupid comment, and I think Dave Cameron should have kept that one to himself, because it just makes him look worse. But, I was at the Czechs morning skate. It wasn't like they were trying really hard. Like, they were just kind of skating around, doing loop-de-loops, and the goalies were trying to score lacrosse goals. Like, wasn't like we were watching like this hard practice out there whatsoever. And they made some line changes too. But I think it became clear though when they didn't hold practices, they weren't going to make a radical line change. And I posted some what I would have done for Team Canada, and a lot of people online were saying the same thing. Like, this makes way more sense because you got guys who know how to play together. Every line has like a good mix of speed and skill and size, and they're all going to complement each other well. We didn't see that in this tournament, and the reluctance to make changes mid-game. Like, sure, they put Gavin McKenna on the first line, but you got to do a bit more than that. Gavin McKenna should have been on the first line a lot more than half a game in the entire tournament. And so, again, you look at it, the inability to make adjustments on the fly hurt them. And then, of course, all those penalties, that was just as bad.
Any theory on why this team would be tired or exhausted at this point in a relatively short tournament?
No clue, man. It's like these are teenagers. These are the guys that are in the peak physical form right now. You know, they didn't have to fly across the world like we've seen like pretty much every other team in this tournament. It makes no logical sense to me, and I don't know. That comment alone was probably one of the dumbest things that Dave Cameron could have said.
Listen, before we talk about guys that weren't there and the makeup of the team, the guys that were there, listen, I actually really liked Braden Yeager yesterday. I mean, I thought that he was, being an experienced guy with the pressure of wearing the C, I thought he did everything that he could to kind of push this thing forward. Obviously, George, the goaltender, I thought was very good throughout the tournament. Who are the guys that, in your opinion, kind of move away from this tournament despite being part of a very disappointing team result that can look back and say, they had a good tournament?
Yeah, you mentioned two for sure. I thought Yeager was probably one of the hardest working players on Canada. A rare situation where a guy sees their ice time and their opportunities actually fall a little bit as a returning player, but it was just kind of no one was questioning the scoring depth on this team or the skill that this team had. And pretty much everybody they cut, there was a good argument as to why they were cut. But when it comes to, I thought Yeager looked good. I thought Jed Luchenko was very good, especially on the penalty kill, a lot of energy there. Tanner Molendyk was consistently Canada's best defenseman. I thought Ethan Gauthier got better as the tournament wore on, but he was more of a depth guy anyways, out there to hit. And before that ejection, I thought Cole Beaudoin did what Cole Beaudoin does well, which is, really forcing opponents to have to make quick decisions. And the penalty sucked, and I have no idea why he was on the first line for a few games, but I think that when we saw him go out there and do what he's really good at, which is being a nuisance and being hard to play against, I thought he did quite well.
Who were the guys that left you wanting more?
Easton Cowan, for a guy who had 56 points, the 50-game point streak, and looked decent in the preseason with the Leafs, and won the OHL MVP and the playoff MVP last year, and was a returning player. He looked lost out there, and he still was one of the top shot generators for Canada, and he did tie for first in scoring, but he also was just brutal in those last two games. It looked like he was scared to make any plays. Same with Sam Dickinson. Obviously, the scoring the goal on his own net didn't help, but I thought that we've seen so much better hockey from him, and that was difficult. And Berkeley Catton, someone who didn't play bad, but just didn't have the points. He led the team in shots. He only had one assist to show for. Nothing seemed to work. It didn't matter what was going on. Like, he was playing with Gavin McKenna. I think the issue was they were really lacking a person who could go out there and score goals on a one-timer. Someone like Porter Martone or Carson Raykopf. Those guys never play there. Luca Pinelli just was not a good fit. But I'd say those three are the ones I really was hoping for a lot more, and they were expected to play big roles and just didn't.
Now, Stephen Ellis with us from Daily Faceoff. He's got a big write-up at DFO right now that you can check out, talking about Canada's failure in the quarterfinals and not moving on to the semis, along with the Czechs, the Americans, the Swedes, and the Finns. Could not help but notice last night, shortly after the game was over, the Ontario Hockey League tweeting out, Misa to Perek scores. NHL draft eligible Michael Misa, fees one to Flames prospect Zane Perek. And they show this move. Those are two guys that have been named, particularly Perek. I mean, I did hear, and I can't remember who said this. They were speaking with an NHL executive that said it was borderline unconscionable that your top offensive defenseman would not be on this team. who are some of the guys that you were? I mean, were there any very stunning omissions to you, in your opinion, from your scouting background? And what do you make of the way that they put this team together, and what did they miss?
The two that really, really should have been there for sure were Beckett Seneca and Michael Misa. So Michael Misa was not even invited to selection camp. At the time, he was on pace for something like 68 goals in the OHL. He has quieted down a little bit. I think he's closer to now 58 or 59. Still amazing for a draft-eligible player. But to not have him at camp, I thought was really strange. And then Beckett Seneca was at camp, but he was a late addition when there was an injury somewhere in the lineup, and he was able to go out there and get an opportunity. But as good as I thought he was in the two selection camp games, it didn't seem to matter. He didn't end up getting a roster spot. So that was surprising. A lot of people look at Zane Parekh. Zane Parekh had a horrible selection camp. Andrew Cristal had a terrible selection camp, just looked invisible. Talking to a lot of scouts there, like, they were all saying the same thing. They didn't expect those guys to be able to make the team. And then beyond that, like, Liam Greentree was a guy I would have liked to see at camp. Michael Hage was another guy I would like to see at camp that didn't make it. Carter Yakimchuk wasn't there. He didn't look really good at that World Junior Summer Showcase, I'll tell you that. And I think that didn't probably help his odds there. He looked good in the preseason for sure for Ottawa, and he's had a good year in the WHL, but they seemed pretty confident in the guys they had. So I'd say, at least at the time when the selection camp, the only two that really were shocking to me were Seneca and Michael Misa.
So when the tall foreheads at Hockey Canada get together and debrief each other, what are the takeaways from this? Because this is now 2 years in a row that the Canadian team has not advanced out of the quarterfinals, which is, for Canadian standards, just not even close to the expectations. And I think there's a lot to get through coming out of this tournament for obvious reasons.
Yeah, like, I think Dave Cameron is probably done ever coaching for Hockey Canada. I'm going to guess that. And yeah, he won the gold in 22.
That'll be a tough sell. It'll be a tough sell.
Yeah. They won gold in 22, but at the same time, a lot of that could look at the team they had there and say, like, Connor Bedard took over and Mason McTavish was great and they got good goaltending. They just an overall really good group in a year where no team was at their best because of it being the COVID, not the COVID tournament per se, but the one coming right out of COVID. And a lot of the good players decided not to play in that tournament. But I think when you look at this, Canada is still doing really good at the international stage. This year, they've already won the U17s. They won the Hlinka Gretzky. They won the U18s back in May. So, like, if we're just looking at just the last few months, a lot of this group has been on winning teams. And in fact, the U17 team in general, 2 straight championships, when that's always been a tough tournament for Canada to win because the United States typically does really well, or Russia will do well and things like that. So when it comes to that, like, Canada's doing really well at all the junior levels. It's just, you got to get that execution, because again, when you're starting the tournament with a potential 60 goal scorer as your 14th forward, that shows you, A, that they got depth, or at the same time shows you maybe they got to be figuring out how to use his lineup a little better, because he should be in the lineup if he could score like that. So again, I think you're going to have some fresh thinking next year. You got to go out there, and it has to be the best 25 players. You cannot go out there and try to get 4 or 5 depth guys. You can't be going out there, guys, just playing there, shut down. Like, you need to get the best players at the time and not try to overthink this, because that, to me, is the biggest thing. They overthought this roster. I understood what they were doing. Clearly it didn't work. They can't do that again next year.
How do you prevent such a lack of discipline in a team like this? There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of emotion. I mean, we know how big a tournament this is for all of these players. But I mean, all the other teams managed to, keep it in check to an extent, and the Canadians just simply weren't able to.
Yeah, like, it's interesting, because this used to be a bigger issue for Canada 10 years ago, where they'd start the tournaments and just take so many penalties, and that's how they'd have to play a lot of catch up from there. But I think what you're looking at this is, I'm no coach, so I can't tell you the best way to get these guys to not do that. But the key thing was that they just didn't improve in that area. They were still taking costly penalties last night, and that game against the United States, I get there's a lot of emotion, and yeah, some of those penalties were a little weak, like the one where Sam Dickinson got a penalty for him tangling with a guy, and then the ref kind of also was involved there. That one felt weak, but at the same time, the Americans got a penalty for Berkeley Catton getting his stick stuck in the board. So, there were definitely some questionable calls there, but they still significantly got way more penalties than any other team in this tournament, and that's unacceptable. And I think part of it is there were a lot of guys out there trying to go for the big hit, forgetting that the WHF will penalize you for really big hits in a lot of cases. If it looks bad, there was a theory that Ryan Kennedy from the Hockey News said yesterday. It's like when the crowd starts to get excited about a penalty, that's when the refs call a penalty. And if you look last night, every time there was a big hit, every time the crowd got really into it, they were calling it. So obviously, a different group next year could be totally different, but they were playing with an edge all the way starting up with those games at U Sports, which are older players, the more physical players, in a lot of cases more skilled players because they're ready to turn pro, and Canada out-hit those guys. And I remember some people saying like Canada was too soft, couldn't handle the physicality. I think they proved that was not a problem in this tournament.
Stephen Ellis with us from Daily Faceoff. You sort of touched on this in your column, but I'll ask you just straight up, where does this rank amongst the biggest disappointments in this tournament for a tournament that is a huge priority for our national body organization?
It's definitely the biggest since I've paid attention to the tournament. And, it's because of the question of what if. What could this team have been? Like, so many people who follow this really closely were pegging Canada to be the favorites because on paper, better defense than the United States, more scoring depth than the United States. Like, that's the thing with the Americans is they brought a team of 29 players to training camp. They cut 4 players. Not a ton of surprises there. They knew what team they wanted, and you look at it, and you don't have point per game guys playing in the bottom 6. Canada did, so there was a lot more scoring options that Canada had at their disposal, and it didn't seem to matter because they didn't play well as a team, and the Americans did. And I think the fact that they had all this individual talent and they couldn't convert that, this will go down as one of the worst results that Canada's ever had because, especially on home ice, like, it shouldn't have been this early of a deficit, especially when you look at the Czech team that for a lot of the tournament, one line was doing the scoring. They were missing 2 of their best defensemen, and probably the most creative player that Czechia has that's eligible for this tournament, they did not bring either. So they've got all these good, young, talented pieces. They were able to overcome it. They played better as a team. Canada didn't play well.
Stephen, for Canadians, the focus was on the Canadian team. For scouts like yourself, you're looking at every team, and obviously you're paying close attention to draft-eligible players. Who sort of stood out regardless of nationality that we'll be hearing a lot about and talking about as we get closer to next June's draft?
Well, Victor Eklund's looked really good for Sweden. He's the brother of William Eklund on the San Jose Sharks, a guy who battles hard. He moves really well. He's got a good shot. He can play on the power play, so we'll see him going forward. James Hagens has been great for USA on the top line, and we thought he'd be a little bit better, but he's still looking pretty good. He's still one of the top scorers in this tournament. Him and Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard, very scary to beat. I'd also look at what Petteri Rimpinen is, an overage goalie, but I'd like to see what he could do for Finland because he might be the top goalie now still available in this tournament. And I'll be voting on the tournament awards. And I know that Rimpinen is probably going to be my pick because he's played every minute for the Finns. He's been outstanding. He had to go out there and beat Kim Saarinen, who is an NHL draft prospect for the Seattle Kraken, to get the starting role. But his play in Liga this year in the top Finnish league has been so impressive that I think teams are going to be able to overlook his small 6 foot, 6.5 foot frame and say, the skill's there. He knows what he could do. He's very calm in the net and very athletic, and maybe we see a team taking a chance on him.
How has just the entire World Junior experience been out in Ottawa? I mean, it seemed like right from the get-go, this is a well-supported tournament. People were really into it, and I imagine, the Latvia game was started off, but last night just a huge buzzkill to the event from a Canadian perspective. But, overall, I mean, well-supported, a good atmosphere?
Yeah, the last couple of times that we've seen NHL rinks host tournaments like this. Like, you look back at Buffalo, Montreal, Toronto, and attendance issues were a problem. And then with this tournament, it hasn't. You look back, I know Hockey Canada is very happy with how TD placed with the Group B, where Sweden and Czechia were the 2 big teams. They were really well supported there. Kazakhstan became very popular, and the downtown area where they've got the Fan Fest has been really cool. They're actually hosting a Hockey Canada announcement very shortly, where they're going to be announcing a bunch of tournaments being hosted by Hockey Canada on the women's side, which is pretty cool. And then there's a lot of talk about how the Canadian Tire Center, the main rink, is in the middle of nowhere, and getting out to it could be a bit difficult. But leaving traffic the first couple days was brutal. But I'd say that overall, it's been really fun. The people have been great here. It seems like there's been a lot of support, and I hope that continues, even though Canada is not moving on. But looking at the ticket prices, it's not going to be easy to get another ticket. So it seems like maybe we will see some good attendance.
Well, it'll be, listen, it's too bad that Canada's not there, but this tournament still moves on. Thoughts on Sweden versus Finland, and could the Czechs beat the U.S.?
We'll start with Sweden and Finland. I think that's a game that should be really close no matter what. The Swedes are, they always play really tough against the Finns. The Finns always love to try to beat the Swedes. And I think Sweden just got a bit more scoring depth, they got a good goalie there, Marcus Gidloff, and they got the better defenders. So I'm going to give Sweden the edge there. When it comes to Czechia, I've still got to give the edge to the Americans. They just look a little bit deeper. They've got, in theory, the best goalie in the tournament, not playing at his best in Trey Augustine, but he can be good. Cole Hudson's been awesome. They've got some great scoring depth, and it feels like the lines they showed against Switzerland, they're even more dangerous than they started. And it's 4 really good lines that are all able to produce. So my guess here, Sweden and the United States for gold. And if I had to pick who's going to win gold, I'm going with the United States for the first time ever to win 2 straight tournaments for that country.
Yeah, is this basically the U.S. is to lose, in your opinion, right now?
Yeah, and it's going to be a rough few years for the U.S. program, because we're looking at the prospects coming up and the 06s, the younger guys on this year's tournament. It's a good group. We probably won't see James Hagens there next year, though, so that'll be a loss. But their current NTDP team is not very good, and the NTDP team for the year after, the U17s right now, might be worse. So it could be a while before we see the Americans really hit that next level again, but right now it feels like it's definitely USA's tournament to lose.
You showed your computer you're already working on a potential 2026 squad. Will we be better, and will we be in a different situation going into the semis next year than we are having this conversation today, Steve?
Better, we'll see. If they take the right team, yes, it should be. But I'm looking at this group here: Porter Martone, Caleb Denoyer, and Gavin McKenna, outstanding at the U18s. Keep them together, and that should be what they're doing. There's a lot of built-in chemistry with this group. Don't screw that up.
Quickly give a plug for what you've got over at Daily Faceoff for the World Juniors coming out of it, and obviously throughout the year on the scouting beat.
Yep, so I'll be doing some more stories kind of leading through the rest of the days of the tournament. Obviously, I had that big breakdown of what went wrong for Canada on tomorrow. Saturday, I'll have my 2026 roster prediction. Going to have some more features before the tournament's over. And on Monday, I'll have a breakdown of how every NHL drafted prospect performed at this tournament.
Steven, always great to catch up, pal. Thanks so much for the time, and enjoy the rest of the tourney out in Ottawa.
Yeah, thanks so much.
There's Steven Ellis. You can check out his work over at Daily Faceoff. All right, Murat's coming up. We will have Hacksaw a little later on when we move past the hockey. But we're still the chat's live today with everything coming out of the loss last night for the Jets, for Team Canada, and of course our why not question of the day involving Jonathan Toews. We'll get to some fan feedback coming up in a minute. But first, I want to thank and wish a very happy new year to our friends at Princess Auto. 2025 is here, and a trip to Princess Auto might be exactly what you need to start working on projects and operations for the new year. Of course, at Princess Auto, you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, Brandon, and you can shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Many of you probably rang in the new year with a cocktail or two. Of course, Canadian Club is Canada's best, oldest, top Canadian whiskey, and it's also the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Now, it'll be a minute before we're back in Princess Auto Stadium enjoying a Canadian Club or ginger, but of course, the entire Canadian Club family of spirits is waiting for you at your local Manitoba Liquor Mart. Make sure to check it out on your next visit to your local MLCC location. Hey, I got to thank our friends at Wallace & Wallace for another year of great support and looking forward to a big 2025. Wallace & Wallace is the fencing and overhead door experts and leaders in town, doing it since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, they've got you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if 2025 is time to bring in a new garage door for your home, Wallace & Wallace has the largest selection in town, so you can get something to perfectly match your home and add value to it at the same time. Give them a call, 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com, wallacedoors.com, or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent, just off of Kenaston. All right, Murat's going to join us in about 5 minutes. Let's get to this right now, because I think this is a topic we will certainly broach with Murat when he joins us as well. So let's get right to it. Fan feedback for our friends at Fans First, your number one spot for buying and selling Winnipeg hockey tickets. Been a great crowd, some sellouts. Can't get a ticket anywhere else. Check out Fans First, and always the best spot for season ticket holders. If you got to move a pair of seats, you can't make a game. Best customer service, and a bottom line, no fees. So when you're picking tickets up or you're selling tickets, it's very clear. What you see is what you pay over at Fans First. So if you joined us late, we played Frank Seravalli's clip on a potential return to the National Hockey League for Jonathan Toews, who just went on a healing retreat to India for 5 weeks. He's talked about it, apparently has resumed skating, and there is thoughts that potentially the Leafs, the Jets, and the Avalanche, all teams rumored to be intrigued by the possibility of a Toews comeback. So we set it out to the chat a little earlier on. And needless to say, there is plenty of takes here. Now, Tyson Ducharme SK says Toews isn't the second line center. Cruiser, this is not the 2010 version of Toews. This is not the 2010 version of Toews. It's a nice story, but it would be a pure depth add. Larry says the Jets should be looking for some scoring and nastiness. TH Power wondering if he can still win faceoffs. And Brent Batter says, wasn't he always good at faceoffs? Yeah, he was an absolute demon. I mean, Selke quality player. SK, still need a second line center who could move up to number one in case 55 gets hurt or struggles. And Scott Westman says, depth guy, room guy, sell tickets and jerseys. No brainer for the Jets. Keep them coming. And then NBHA, and where exactly are you going to find a nasty top six player? They don't grow on trees, and they cost a heck of a lot. It's your boy Bruce, not down with this. Doesn't even fit. This is just a story for the hometown folks. I disagree. We'll see what Murat has to say. Keep it coming on fan feedback. Brought to you by fansfirst.ca. By fans, for fans, no fees. Check out the site today. Certainly throughout this 8-game homestand for the Winnipeg Jets. Let's get Remo back in here before Murat joins us. Lots of talk on this. I knew this would be a very hot button topic, Remo. I'm not sure that people are sort of shutting the door on Toews still being an impact player. I'm not saying that he will be for sure, but I don't necessarily rule that out like it seems some in the chat have done.
Yeah, very hot topic, piqued everyone's interest. It was Frank Seravalli yesterday on the Amazon Prime Thursday coast to coast around 10 o'clock, like 10:30. They're bringing on Frank Seravalli. I got to stay up late if you want to hear the spicy news drops. And it reminded me of a couple years ago where you had the conversation with Mike McIntyre, and I posted it as a video on this channel about bringing Jonathan Toews to Winnipeg. Now, at that time, he was under contract, and he had a very sizable cap number, which I think maybe
10-5.
I'm sure, yeah, which turned people off. There were 45 comments on that video, that got just over 3,500 views, and I think we had a mixed up. It's a different situation now. He's a free agent. However, you are going to be bidding with other teams, and what I think he's a couple years older than he even was then, and what kind of impact can he make? If you're going to bring him in and still, bring in other players, yeah. I mean, I think you don't say no to bringing in a guy like Jonathan Toews. And, I mean, what a great story would that be? A hometown guy. We want a hometown guy, see one on the Jets. That would be very cool. And a guy who's had the success he's had, he can certainly bring a lot to the team. Yeah, I think you for sure have to look at it and see if there's interest there and if you can be a match. as far as where he played, would he be, Frank mentioned Toronto, looking at him for third line center because they do have Matthews and Tavares as 1 and 2. For the Jets, I think he would probably, I agree, he would be an upgrade over to Mesnikov, so you put him in at second, but maybe are you looking at other directions as well? So I think where does it fit in terms of your entire plan is a question, but should they try to bring him? Yeah, I think that would be great. And I put out the poll, should the Winnipeg Jets sign Jonathan Toews? 74% say yes.
He is, I guess, probably the most decorated and successful player ever to come out of Winnipeg. Now, listen, I mean, that's a nice kind of side story to it, the fact that he is from the Peg, and maybe that gives the Winnipeg Jets maybe a little bit more of a puncher's chance if you're, kind of going up against the Colorados and Torontos of, in any sort of a bidding or, a challenge to try to get him to decide where to go. But, I mean, let's not forget, the mantle that this guy has. And I know people are saying he's too old. We've seen a lot of impact players, do special things at 36 and 37. And this isn't just some guy. Listen, he's up there with the Patrice Bergerons of the best centers in the National Hockey League over the course of this era or this generation. Now, again, I can't really speak to it because we don't know how he'll be, but I would really caution people to just write off a guy like Jonathan Toews. Because he's 36 and he's been out of the game for a little bit. If he does come back refreshed, invigorated, with a lot of energy, feeling great, be past everything that he'd been dealing with, as I said, I don't rule out the possibility of him being a very, very important cog in a team that, could do some special things in the playoffs if he's got the right guys around them. And I think all three of those teams, it doesn't surprise me at all that they're lining up to at least have those conversations. I have a feeling, Remis, this is not the last time that this topic is going to be brought up on this program and talked about. This is going to get people going, I think, for sure.
I already got text saying, "Hey, is this your new thing now, Jonathan Toews watch, where we're listening to every insider? Where is he going to sign?" The same thing. Bring him home, right? This is Trotz watch all over again, leading into the trade deadline. As Frank said, has to be on a roster by the deadline if you want him in the playoffs. Yeah, I agree. This is going to be a topic through it. Where is he going to sign? Is there going to be plane tracking happening, Hustler? What teams he's meeting with? Where, I don't even know where he's living right now. Has anyone seen him around Winnipeg? Have you taken pictures of him filling up gas anywhere? So yeah, I think this could be a big story. Unlike making a big move at the deadline, you don't have to give up futures. It's just salary. So I think that's also why it would be a huge bonus for any team that gets him. And as far as the other teams, Maple Leafs make sense there on everyone, but I agree. The Colorado would be scary. They've fixed their goaltending situation, and they're scoring. Last night I was watching the games after the Jets lost. I was, well, it's not so bad. The Jets losing to the Ducks. Colorado, they're losing 5-3 right now to Buffalo in the third period. Well, I seem to have jinxed myself because they came back and tied it with 7 seconds left. Jonathan Drouin back from injury, and then it was Devon Toews who could, defenseman on a breakaway in overtime, ending it. So it doesn't get any easier for Buffalo and Colorado. That's why they're so scary. McKinnon, Rantanen. It was Makar scoring goals yesterday. And imagine if they had Jonathan Toews. But, those are the teams that he knew were interested. I was listening to Kenny and Rennie. They were saying, well, wouldn't Edmonton be interested as well in a player like that? I'm sure everyone would be if it's going to cost you. If it's just going to cost you money.
He'd be one of the younger players on the Oilers roster.
Yeah.
I kid, of course. Well, listen, keep on firing your hot takes in the chat. But let's bring in, Jay Miller off from a lifetime supply of 1919 Huss. Yeah. We'll see if we can, as I say, we need to know where he's at, and obviously the teams are going to need to know where he's at, but let's get Murat in here. We'll talk the latest on the Jets and see what he has to say about this. Of course, you can check out Murat and all of his work at theathletic.com. Murat, Happy New Year to you, my friend. How are the holidays?
Happy New Year, Huss. Holidays were good. Lots of family time. The Fred Penner musical holiday party was a nice time that I can brag about a little bit. My stage debut at the Park Theater was pretty cool. Park Theater? No, the Burt for JP Ho's show. That was a nice time. And then I got sick. So the last few days have not been the best, but for you, I seem to have taken a big step better today. I just got back from the rink, and so hopefully it means we're all systems go soon.
Well, I was hoping we'd be able to talk, but I did know you were a little bit under the weather, so I'm glad you are feeling better, and it's great to have you back to kick off 2025. Listen, we want to get to the homestand, last night's game, tomorrow against Detroit, Hellebuck, a bunch of topics. But right off the top of the show, we played the clip from Frank Saravelli discussing a potential return of Jonathan Toews, and he specifically mentioned the Leafs, the Jets, and the Colorado Avalanche's teams that have some significant interest. Obviously, we don't have a lot of information about how far along, how serious this is, but what do you think about even the conversation of the Winnipeg Jets being interested to add Jonathan Toews, and would it be a fit in your mind?
I mean, the conversation 100% makes sense to have. How could you not be from Winnipeg, have seen Jonathan Toews on ice hockey career, the gold medals, the Stanley Cups, the level of hockey that he achieved, and not think to yourself a little bit, well, wouldn't that be a nice homecoming story? Wouldn't there be something there? Especially when you size it up against Winnipeg's presumed roster needs, which, a second line center we've been talking about in this city forever. So I get that. That makes sense. And obviously Cheveldayoff and Toews would have ties from their early days in Chicago and all of that sort of stuff as well. So it would make sense to talk about. It would make sense if Winnipeg was interested. And then, is it actually a good idea? That depends on the level of hockey that Jonathan Toews is capable of playing at this stage in his career and in his life. I don't know if there's any reason to believe coming out of his last couple of attempts in Chicago that there's a really quality 200-foot second line center type player available. Does that have to be the guy? I'm not sure, but he's also the sort of player that a lot of people wouldn't bet against. If he put his mind to a thing, you have to imagine if he believed that he were playing at a high level, he might be able to get to that. And what if he were just a fourth line center at this stage of his NHL career? Would that still have some value given the cups, the gold medals, and all that sort of stuff? I get it. I get the distinct sense I'm going to be sick of this conversation in about a month from now. But it makes sense to have. My pretentiousness about oh God, are we talking about Jonathan Toews to Winnipeg again? Doesn't matter. It makes sense that they would be interested in kicking tires at the very least. And if he can play, I'm sure there's a lot of teams who would want him on their roster.
I mean, this guy has, an incredible legacy. He is his direct. He could just not even have this conversation and walk right into the Hall of Fame as soon as he's eligible. I'm not sure that he would be even entertaining the possibility of this if he didn't think that this was something that, he would not just be able to come and be a bit player on a team, but be a guy that could, be a difference maker for a team, whatever the role that he would be in. Yeah,
I don't know Jonathan Toews personally, so I can only go based on legend and lore and the competitive Mr. Serious, Captain Serious sort of vibes that others who know him better have written about and talked about. But it makes sense. I think he doesn't have anything to prove in terms of winning another thing, right? He made it to the highest highs of NHL and international hockey. So it wouldn't, to me, be about just playing some sort of bit role or guest spot on a team, sign with the biggest contender you can find and just, hope to add to the trophy case. I think it would be about, this is again my interpretation, not knowing the person. It would be about proving to yourself that you're still capable of doing what you did at the highest level for so long. And I think that's more compelling It's very few of us get to do what we do at the best level on the entire planet, and then to have that taken away from you by sort of a mysterious health situation and at a time where you still believe you're capable of it. I think Jonathan Toews, the person, would probably gain a lot if he were able to prove to himself that, hey, I've still got it. And if he does still got it, then like you were telling Remo earlier, it would make sense that every team would be curious about that player.
Yeah, it's, I mean, look, there's a little bit of romanticism with him being a Winnipeg guy, but considering how long we've been having this conversation about another player that can come in, playoff proven, help you down the middle, if you were getting a rejuvenated, refreshed version of Jonathan Toews that could still come and do just some of what he used to do, that's a guy that can help team win games, especially in the playoffs. And I'm sort of with you. I have a feeling that this is going to be a topic. I mean, certainly as long as there is more reports out that he is skating and really entertaining this, I don't think there's any doubt that the Winnipeg Jets would be right there. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, and I don't expect you to either. But just thinking about the other teams that were mentioned, all things being equal, I would imagine the Jets would have a bit of an advantage from a cap perspective, as opposed to Toronto and Colorado, the two other teams that were named in Frank's report.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I don't have that information in front of me for the other teams, certainly. But one of the advantages that Winnipeg has right now, and this would go against most contenders, this is something I've checked in a more general sense, is that Winnipeg has cap space, despite the injuries, has been accruing cap space, entered the season in a good cap position. That's one of the true advantages of the Winnipeg Jets right now. And credit Kevin Cheveldayoff and Larry Simmons and everybody who works on that sort of stuff for the Jets. You know, had Cole Perfetti signed long-term for more money, there'd be less cap space there. Or had they not made the astute additions of the Nino Niederreiters and Vladislav Namestnikovs of the world, all of that sort of stuff heading into this, you might not find a team that is simultaneously this good, this close to the top of the standings, and in that kind of cap position. So yeah, I think that's an advantage. One thing that I did sort of pull up there just in the last few moments, I just went to Hockey Viz just for a quick assessment of what Jonathan Toews' impact on possession was in his last couple of years in Colorado. And just according to that one site in Chicago. I've flipped names a couple of times and places a couple of times already. I'm sorry about that. So in Chicago for his last couple of seasons, he's more of a third line or fourth line impact on possession and on scoring chances, according to this one source. So that would be something to sort of taper expectations. But hey, if that's the bar you're talking about, that only makes it more affordable, whether you're the Winnipeg Jets or otherwise.
Well, and here's the other thing. I mean, I think we all know that he was dealing with a lot, at the end of his career. I mean, it ended up taking, a step away from the game and then going, just watch, he'll come back, he'll kick ass, he'll look like he's 26 instead of 36, and then every single injured player, a guy that deals with something, is going to spend the summer in India every year on a healing retreat to come back and be bigger and better for the to continue their NHL career. Listen, while we're on the topic, not necessarily of Toews, but of that second line center spot, what do you make of the recent play of the second line? Cole Perfetti in particular, where Nikolai Ehlers is at, coming back from injury, and Vlad Namestnikov, despite the fact that there was a bit of a flip-flop for a while last night.
Yeah, last night I was in and out, to be honest, again, still just not feeling well. So I'm sorry, I don't have, but an overall impression of sort of where they've been at is, I think there's been a fair bit to like, but obviously the offense hasn't been there, right? This is a line that has outscored its opponents on the whole this season. The last time I checked, which was about a week ago, Cole Perfetti had the single best 5-on-5 goal differential of the Winnipeg Jets, which is maybe a surprise to a lot of folks. So they were doing pretty well with the minutes that they got, really well with the minutes that they got. But I think people want to see goals and assists, and I don't think that line's been incredibly productive of late. Some of the nice plays that they've made haven't turned into anything. And I think it's reasonable to ask about those three players' offensive chemistry at getting the puck into the middle of the ice and into the most dangerous places at this stage. I see I see Cole Perfetti sort of like eating hits and checks by going to the front of the net as Nikolai Ehlers does his perimeter sort of carving around. And that's not the ideal usage of that player's skill. Vladislav Nemestikov has gotten to the net, but he's hitting posts and things like that as well. And that, excuse me, those moments of magic where it seems like Nemesnikov just understands where everybody is. And we saw that in portions of last season, especially prior to Monahan's arrival, where it seemed like he was the chemistry builder, especially whenever Nikolai Ehlers was present. I just haven't seen that. And I wonder if he's playing through something, Nemestikov as well. It's a situation, I guess, where I would say it hasn't been as good as the sum of its parts. I won't write off a single one of those three players or anything to that effect, because I do still see them spending some time in the offensive zone, knocking pucks down. I think there's a lot there that just isn't translating, and I don't know if they need a switch, and that's why you saw lines flip around a little bit last night. That makes sense to me, actually. Or if it's another situation of waiting it out and maybe they can find something in terms of finishing and those really grade A quality chances that they haven't had in a while.
You know, I mean, obviously the next couple months will be a lot of talk about the upcoming trade deadline. It could be earlier. I mean, we saw the Jets kind of act a month out to get Sean Monahan last year. But when you look at that line, let's assume that the first line and the third and the fourth lines have been playing well and they're pretty much intact. You're looking to add and boost that line in the middle. Is there a type of player? Like, what are you looking at in a second line player to come in and get the most out of, assuming that it's Ehlers and Perfetti that are on the wings?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough player ask, because I want like a Stanley Cup caliber second line center, right? Like somebody who would be a first line center on a lot of teams, because I see this team as like everyone in the world, every contending team would want that player. So if JT Miller becomes available, great. If Nazem Kadri were at his best, like when he played for Colorado on their run, great. If Ryan O'Reilly were still at the level he was playing for the St. Louis Blues when the Blues beat the Jets all those years ago, instead of struggling in Nashville, great. Like, these are the player types that I imagine. And it's basically because if Perfetti and Ehlers are your wingers and you want them to make hay offensively, I want one of the best two-way centers available. Ehlers plays good defense by being a good transition player, by playing a lot in the offensive zone, but his in-zone coverage isn't going to be of the elite two-way players in the league. Cole Perfetti knocks down pucks. He makes really smart plays at each blue line. He helps do things, or he does things that contributes to offensive zone time. But there's going to be a moment in the slot or in some battle situation where you wish that you had a 6'4", 210 player winning those battles. That type of guy, somebody with like that proven playoff truculence and the offense to match. Vincent Trocheck out of New York, if they're falling apart, like, these are the player types that come to mind when you ask that question, because I actually I've seen a lot of criticism of the points and point production of some members of the second line lately. I think there's so much more there. And I think that that sort of upgraded player type in the middle, you know, could have a really big impact on what you get out of them come playoff time.
You know, one of the guys that I kind of see seems to keep coming up in just conversations with friends or people hitting me up in the DMs is Brock Nelson. Who's a pending UFA. He's 33 years old, but I mean, this guy, you know, his last 3 seasons, 37, 36, 34 goals, a proven playoff performer. Is that a guy that would intrigue you for the Jets?
I think so. I'd have to do more homework on playing style and like the specific things that he does to lead to those results, but that's a good player. He does have the size, and you know, you mentioned his playoff resume. I don't know its ins and outs, to be honest, but I trust you. So there's a lot there. That's the type of, like, if you're starting with the rubric for the ideal player, it is somebody who has a good playoff resume and who does have the size and who does have the skill as well. And you know, if Brock Nelson can be that, then great. That seems like a worthy addition to all the consideration.
How set do you think the Jets' bottom six is? I mean, do they need to add there? I'll be honest. I mean, I think the Lowry line and their performance speaks for themselves, and watching the way Morgan Barron's played as of late, with him kind of, taking the puck to the net a lot more, playing with a little bit more confidence, I think. And he certainly has the speed. Kupari, maybe not the best hands, but, a real burner. And then depending on where Appleton is, if he's back, if he's with Lowry, great. If he's out, Alex Iafallo coming up. And I think Alex Iafallo has been, a real impact player. We certainly saw it last night. We always focus on the big pieces, the second line center, an impact defenseman. But how do you think the Jets could go into the playoffs confident right now that their bottom six would give them an advantage on most nights against who they're playing?
Honestly, I do. I really do. That's not a situation where I'm looking for massive changes or swings or anything to that effect. And part of that is the track record of Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton. Part of that is Morgan Barron. He has been flying of late, hasn't he?
So good.
And turning, dropping his shoulder and driving the net. That's a great player to have on your fourth line. And if it's Alex Iafallo, that's a great player to have on your fourth line as well. I don't know if Kupari just hasn't maintained some of those high-end skill plays he made earlier or what have you, but we may have overreacted to some of that early step forward. He's still quite the capable player for that spot in the roster. So, if that's the spot Jonathan Toews is playing, you're probably rich. But the only other things that I can think of in terms of an upgrade, if you're leaving the rest of the roster alone, is there a veteran fourth line center who will also drop the gloves so that maybe Logan Stanley doesn't have to as often? Does that player exist and not cost you the speed that's been the hallmark of that fourth line in their forechecking? Maybe. Or if there's a top six upgrade and Nemestikov ends up bumped down and that gives you more options, that also changes things. And maybe we'll see what comes out of these line shuffles you saw last night, right? If Niederreiter can be an option in the top six, let's say the Jets don't get that truculent top six type forward on the trade market, but there's somebody else available. Does Niederreiter become somebody who will get to those dirty areas and make more hay there than Cole Perfetti does, for example, allowing Perfetti to play a bit of a different role? Those are the things. But I honestly have to say that Winnipeg's bottom six, I rate as a strength compared to even the very best teams in the league.
I'm with you on that. I kind of figured that you'd say that. And, watching, and I've been thinking about this a lot just with the way that Barron has been playing lately. He kind of reminds me of a guy, and maybe this is just very optimistic thinking, rose-colored glasses, but, you see the way that he's playing, the putting the shoulder down, taking the puck to the net, the speed that he has. And that's a guy that might not stand out, game 40, game 41 of the regular season. But that is the kind of player that often makes a big impact come playoff time. I think of what Dakota Joshua was doing last year for the Vancouver Canucks. When they get to that point, some guys that, you don't talk a lot about, that all of a sudden are like, wow, this guy is, really stepping up and seems to be made for playoff hockey. And I really do think that the focus is going to be on the blue line and potentially a significant piece in the middle moving forward. As far as the blue line goes, Murat, where are we at right now with our Stanometer and Ville Heinola, who was back in last night? I will say this. Stanley did make one actually very nice pass to Kyle Connor last night, and he just missed it. And I almost triggered the entire Jets fan base by saying, if Kyle Connor could just finish, Big Stan would have a 4-game point streak. I decided not to do that for the wrath that it would incur. He's actually been on the score sheet a little bit lately. I'm not sure whether that really changes much for Stanley. To me, if he's going to be the guy that they want him to be, it's not about rushing. It's more about crushing, if you will. And then, Ville's sort of been in and out of the lineup, but still waiting for those sort of glimpses of, what just sort of excited fans. Bottom half of the defense core right now. Let's take your temperature on it.
Yeah, it's such a fun debate at all times. It's one of those that, we've had so many times. So for me, Logan Stanley's recent push, I've liked some of the plays that he's made in the offensive zone, and it almost seems as though maybe maybe it came off of that assist to Nikolai Ehlers on that really beautiful Ehlers goal from a few games ago. And now he makes an aggressive play that leads to, was it Gabe Vilardi who scored? Like, he's made some nice offensive zone cuts of late. And I think it starts with that breakout pass, and maybe he's feeling it offensively. It reminds me that Logan Stanley's probable instincts, the way that I read him as a player, are not in harmony with his 6'7" frame and the fact that he can fight and hold his own. Like, I think that if how do I say this? At the level of hockey that he would be at his most optimal, I think Logan Stanley would contribute to the offense because he would play with confidence like you've seen jumping in off the line of late. He's made cuts to keep pucks in. He's passed pucks up the wall and then cut into the middle. And whether he receives that pass back or not, it does force a forward to come with him, which opens up space. Those things would be a part of Logan Stanley's game in the most optimal setting. Because all I want from any player is to outscore the minutes that you get. And Stanley has done that, to be honest, this year, especially as a third pairing defenseman, which is a little bit easier to do. So that would help him do that. That would help generate offense for the Jets. And yet, I think that the things that he's in the lineup for right now and why he's a player that can't be taken out a lot of the time is because he's a rare physical element on the Jets. And I think that's not in harmony with what his hockey playing instincts are sometimes. I think it's a hat that he wears because he sees its importance and how much his teammates and his coaches value it. Ville Heinola, inconsistent of late. I thought he had some just excellent games heading into the holiday break there. And I don't think that, and again, my view of last night was not precise, but I don't think in the last couple of games I've seen him make those same confident impacts. It's a situation where I think we should all take a lot of patience. I think it's fair to say he's not impacting the game in major ways right now, and to have patience and say that maybe, at the end of a long stretch of games heading into later this year or next year or whatever it is, this 23-year-old player might be a more useful player for the Winnipeg Jets. And just to wrap all that up, and I'm sorry for the monologue, I'm finding it as I say it. That's why I asked Dean Chenoweth about patience today. And he paused and said, you know what? That is a good question. We should have patience here. You can see that clip. I think Dave Minuk tweeted it around. And it's because we forget Logan Stanley missed time for injuries. Ville Heinola missed 2 months for injuries and did it last year as well. This rotation, we're still gaining information, particularly about Heinola, who has played less than Stanley has. And I think that any game, if he goes off tomorrow night or next game, I don't think that's a finish line for him. If he struggles wildly for a few games, I don't think that's a finish line for him. I think it does behoove us to sort of take a breath when talking about both these players, the younger one especially.
Well, just the reason I bring this up right now is that I'm kind of with you. I mean, I think you have to have patience with a player like Ville. Unfortunately for Ville, this is a team that's battling for first place. There's a lot on the line, and Dylan Sandberg is coming back. And this period of a month or so with Dylan Sandberg out was going to be the time that Stanley got more playing time. Ville Heinola got in a little bit more. We've seen Dylan Coghlan go in and I think assert himself very well in very limited playing time. And, those minutes and those opportunities to be in the active roster get a lot more precious the second Dylan Sandberg's back in the lineup.
Oh, 100%. And, coming from their optional practice today, Dylan Sandberg is skating pretty well. Like, this is a guy, I didn't see him in a battle drill. Nobody's hacking and whacking at his feet or anything like that. But just in terms of how he's moving on that recovering broken foot, it might not be long before that opportunity runs dry for some of those other players. And that's a tough spot to be in if you're Ville Heinola, who's been pulled in and out of the roster on any given day, and who missed time earlier in the year, and who was coming from a longer way back in terms of his spot on the depth chart. But that's the game. If he had been able to show a little bit more dynamism and a little bit more consistent quality, there might be more optimism there now than probably there should be. And I say that continuing to believe in the player long term. I just don't think that that's going to be there for him this season. It's hard for me to see a world in which Samberg comes back and Hanel as an everyday Jets player based on the decisions the Jets have made so far this season and the way that Hanel has played. It's hard for me to think that they don't need an upgrade anyways, which takes, for me, Logan Stanley as out of the everyday player equation if they're making a long playoff run as well, even understanding that he plays a physical role that some guys don't. Like, I think the Jets need an upgrade even after Samberg comes back that maybe makes Hanel the number 8 based on the current depth chart, how they're running it, and Stanley the number 7. I don't know if you're trying to help this team make a really long playoff run. You credit both guys for how they've attempted to make the best out of the time that they've had, and you recognize that if you actually look at the metrics of the third pairing as it's run, the guys that have played the best in that sheltered role have been Hayden Fleury and Colin Miller. So I don't know. If you're running into a long playoff run, I sort of defer to the veterans in that particular situation, unless we see some really big transformations as the season rolls along.
Yeah, no, it is a great point. Murat attaches with this from The Athletic. Hey, just before we go off of the Jets for a minute, what do you make of this mess in Vancouver with Elias Paterson, JT Miller? Like, I sometimes it gives me just like the heebie-jeebies talking about it, because it is just such a flashback to like 2018-19 here in Winnipeg, it seems. I mean, I'm getting those vibes, but to the point where they're set seemingly for 6-7 years at the center position and now entertaining calls on both of those players. Murat, what a disaster.
I mean, yeah, what a disaster. And like, I don't know what the interpersonal issues are that they're referencing obliquely that lead to this. But, if you listen to the insiders, they, like you said, they're listening to calls, and there's a sense, was it Sarah Valley that reported this? Was it Friedman? But the sense was that the Canucks are worried that the conflict is bleeding into other parts of the organization. That's a problem. And that's a problem that needs resolution. And that resolution, as far as I can see, is one of those players moving out. Now, of course, we've seen a lot of confusing and strange things in the NHL before, and relationships can be patched. I remember like a really famous one being Mike Comrie being asked by the Edmonton Oilers to pay for his signing bonus to give them the money back as they traded him out of town. And then years later, he signed back with the Oilers after relationships were mended. So sometimes stuff that looks like it's heading in one direction, like reverses and doesn't go all the way there. At the same time, the Canucks do have to, I wonder if they feel the way Winnipeg did when Dubois wasn't convinced to stick around, because Scheifele and Dubois were meant to keep the Jets stocked at center for the foreseeable future, and that didn't work out. Either way, I mean, make those calls. You would be in a better spot as any team with either one of those players on your roster than not, I think. And I mean, JT Miller has a pretty abrasive reputation, at least from the media that I speak to that know him best. But wouldn't that be an incredible second line center on the Winnipeg Jets if you could have him? Or Paterson, should he be on any role? I mean, there's so much offensive ability there. The Vultures are circling, and they should be circling.
It is a mess, but the drama is good for business, as they say, for everyone following the National Hockey League. Murat, get some rest, buddy. Hope you're feeling better. Thanks so much for doing this today. Great chat as always. Happy New Year to you, and we'll see you at the rink.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. There's Murat Atesh. You can check out his latest at theathletic.com. And, of course, you can find him on X at WPG Murat. All right. We are going to get to the NFL Notebook with Hacksaw, and in about 10 minutes or so, we'll open up registration for marbles. So pay attention to that. Do not forget January 16th, our next WST game. But before that, big game tomorrow night against the Detroit Red Wings. And then Tuesday, Nashville's back in town to take on the Jets again. And it is the Beat the Winter Blues night. And cooler bag for the first 5,000 fans coming to Canada Life Center for the Tuesday game. And I can't wait for the Canucks to show up in a couple weeks. It's going to be quite interesting to have Matt Sakaris and some of our friends from Vancouver on to talk about what the heck is going on with the Canucks. Hey, Beer Friday, you know what that means. Hacksaw coming up, and a big cheers to our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
We got a great sports weekend coming up at your local Boston Pizza gang. There's 5 games tonight. Of course, I'm not sure if people will be as dialed in on the World Juniors now that Canada is out of the tournament. But an NFL doubleheader tomorrow. We're going to get to that with Hacksaw. Jets Wings tomorrow night downtown. And then a full slate of games headlined by Sunday night's battle for the NFC between the Vikings and Lions. Pop by your local Boston Pizza for all the games on the big screen with sound. Enjoy a few ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and more. And if you're staying at home, you can always get the great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. And a big shout and Happy New Year to our pals down at Royal Sports, Winnipeg's #1 sports superstore. Very busy stretch for the Jets right now. Maybe you got a little Christmas money. You're looking to invest in some new Jets gear. Obviously, the best selection of Jets merchandise from jerseys, hats, hoodies, you name it, they got it. Royal Sports, exclusive bomber gear. Your favorite NFL merch, getting ready for the playoffs. I know you Viking fans are fired up for Sunday and what's to come next week. It's all there at Royal. The biggest selection, best prices, and of course, the biggest hockey section in town for all of you hockey players. And don't forget all the cool stuff over on the Kings skate, snow, and surf side. You got to see it to believe it. 750 Pembina Highway. And give them a follow on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. One more week in the National Football League, and then it gets real. 14 teams will qualify for the playoffs. We're still waiting to confirm who that 14th team will be. Let's get ready for the Week 18 action with Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Hacksaw, Happy New Year. How was your belated Christmas with the fam?
We finally took down the Christmas decorations and the tree today. It was really great, but it's the weirdest thing in the world to celebrate Christmas on December 30th. But that's what we do because my kids all live out of town in the Pacific Northwest and in Texas and the Grand Canyon. But it was cool. Thank you for asking. Are you ready for some football?
Oh, I'm ready for some football. I mean, to be honest, I have this sense of zen right now coming into this final week because the Chiefs have clinched first. Wentz is going to be playing. Mahomes could be a father for the 3rd time any minute. And then, of course, he'll bring that baby swag into the divisional final. But while teams like the Chiefs, the Bills know where they're going to be, the Ravens have a pretty good idea. We've still got some games. And listen, before we get to the marquee NFC game, let's focus in on the AFC because the Denver Broncos are the one team that we expect to be in the playoffs, but still have some work to do. And the Bengals and the Dolphins still hoping that maybe some Wentz magic can open the door for them to get in.
Well, we got 5 teams fighting for wild card slots. 5. And there's only a couple of these wild card slots left. Pittsburgh is the top wild card team, but they're in trouble. They've lost 3 in a row. The Chargers are red hot. And the big issue here is obviously who is the other one coming in the door? Is it Cincinnati, which is rolling under Joe Burrow? Is it Denver, which has this home game against a Kansas City team that's going to rest its stars? Or is it Miami on the outside looking in, but a whole bunch of other things have to happen? Here's the wild part of the equation. And I haven't been able to figure all this out because I was never good in calculus. But somebody of that collective group is going to wind up going to Buffalo in a first-round game. Somebody else in that group is going to wind up having to go to Baltimore for a first-round game. How brutal is that for these wild card teams to where they have to go to play because these are the powerhouse teams in the AFC? So I'm going to be just fascinated to see how this whole thing sorts out. Denver is going to regret a couple of games they let get away right at the end of the season because I think of clock management issues and mistakes made by Sean Payton on the sideline. It's come back to haunt them, and now they're fighting for their lives, and they got to play Kansas City even without Mahomes and maybe without Kelsey and maybe without one of their running backs. Kansas City is still a tough out, even though that game is in Denver. Cleveland's got so the Chargers got the Raiders. That should be a walkover. The Raiders are in utter dismay. And you got Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. Cincinnati's just clawed their way back into this thing. And Pittsburgh's not the team it was when it got its 10 wins before hitting this bad skid. And there's a lot of unhappiness in Pittsburgh about Mike Tomlin and what's happened to the roster and the offense, et cetera. So there's some wild stuff in the AFC. And normally you'd be excited or made the playoffs as a wild card team. But, pal, one of the guys is going to Buffalo, the other one's going to Baltimore. That's not easy.
Well, and that's the thing with the Steelers in this game against Cincinnati. I mean, the Bengals are trying to stay alive and give themselves a shot with some good fortune on Sunday to be there. But the Steelers, if the Steelers can win this game, they get the Texans. And I would say I think they'd probably be favored in that game, considering the way Houston's finished. And listen, I understand that the Steelers have lost 3 in a row. I don't think they're one of the top most elite teams in the league. They just lost at Philly, at Baltimore, and home to the Chiefs. I'm not really surprised they lost any of those games. But it's important for them not only to get that 5 seed, but also to get things, back to where they were when they were surprising most of the league, because the stakes are high. As you point out, it's a hell of a lot different from going to Reliant Stadium to play the Texans than having to go to the bank and take on Baltimore and Lamar Jackson.
Your sales pitching me Pittsburgh. My wife's from West Virginia. She's just a diehard Steeler fan. She's pitching me Pittsburgh. But that's Joe Burrow. That's Joe Burrow with 4,600 yards passing, Joe Burrow with 42 touchdowns, Joe Burrow with 8 interceptions, and Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and 2 tight ends. I just don't see how Pittsburgh can stay in any game at this point because they got a pedestrian offense against the firepower that Joe Burrow shows up with Cincinnati.
Joe Burrow isn't on defense, Hacksaw. That's the problem for Cincinnati.
I concur with you, but this is a Bengal offense that is just torching people right now. But
remember the matchup earlier between these teams, and it was a hell of a fun game. And I mean, Joe Burrow did what he's done all year long. He put up 38 points. Great. They gave up 44. So I get it. There's a lot of people high, and Burrow has had individually an amazing season. That team, well, as I said, I think people are selling the Steelers short right now, but we will see. I mean, it would make for some nice drama if Cincinnati was able to win, because this is a team. Now, I know there's some people that say, oh, the Chiefs don't want the Bengals to win. They would be more than happy for the Bengals to be in, because the Bengals will only be the 7th seed. And if they were ever to play Kansas City, that would mean Buffalo is out. And dare I say, I think Buffalo is a much more intimidating team to most teams in the AFC than that. As far as the NFC goes, when we look at some of the matchups this week, there's not a lot to be determined. But the Rams are in a situation where they are in the playoffs, Lee, but there could be some seeding that's up for grabs. And obviously Tampa needs to win that NFC South. If they don't and the Falcons win, Baker and the guys will be on the sidelines.
Well, I'll say this. Tampa Bay has just really been rugged to play against because Baker Mayfield's got a 42 touchdown season going. And they're chucking the ball all over the yard, and they're doing it with a badly battered wide receiver core, and yet Baker Mayfield's got 42 touchdown passes. So Tampa's really scary. I don't give Atlanta much of a chance because they're grooming the kid quarterback, and I don't think Atlanta's a complete football team right now. And Kirk Cousins has turned out to be an abomination of a $120 million investment. The Rams situation, they have won 9 of their last 11. They're in. They're really banged up. It looks as if they're going to sit Matthew Stafford, sit Cooper Kupp, sit Puka Nacua, and sit the running back Kyron Williams. So they're going to play Seattle. Seattle has obviously faltered. Seattle's got Geno Smith and just does not have a lot else around him. The Rams are just going to be in the playoffs. They'll take their chances. And, the NFC, the marquee game, and we're wasting our breath and our conversation time and your time on your podcast if you're not talking Minnesota, Detroit, because that's all anybody that I've crossed paths with want to talk about. And here's the really sub-storyline here. This is going to be a great game. Vikings, Lions, the quarterbacks, the coaches, the personalities, the explosiveness. The loser with 14 wins is going to wind up being a road team as a wild card team in the NFC. Go figure that one out.
This is a great example why I think there certainly maybe should be a little bit more discussion on, you can make the playoffs if you win your division, but it maybe shouldn't necessarily. Like, it is sort of crazy that you're going to have a 10-7 or a 9-8 team hosting a 14-3 team, but that's exactly the way things will be. This game shapes up to be one of the games of the season. And I'm not entirely sure if this is, but I think this might be the highest total of the year. It's 56.5. Because the Lions offensively are an absolute juggernaut, but Lee, their defense has been absolutely decimated. I think particularly the loss of Carlton Davis, who they really did sign to take care of that corner position and go at Justin Jefferson. He's not there. I mean, this could be one of the most fun games to watch if you have no skin in the game for points, but there, to your point, is so much on the line. And I think both teams go into this matchup feeling that they're the better team and have a very good chance to win and take the next week off and get ready for a home game in the divisional weekend.
Well, the whole storyline has been Sam Darnold's contract year, comeback player of the year, Kevin O'Connell's linkage with a journeyman quarterback who got cut by two different teams. And on his driver's license right now, Sam Darnold's thrown for 4,100 yards and 35 touchdowns. And, of course, he's got two brilliant receivers and tight ends. But, on the other side of the street is Jared Goff. And you tell me, when they made the Jared Goff-Matthew Stafford trade years ago, Detroit got rid of a quarterback and a franchise that wasn't winning, and the Rams got rid of a quarterback who underachieved. And look what Stafford became in L.A., Super Bowl appearances and a ring. And what Goff has thrown for 4,400 yards and 36 touchdowns this season. It's just absolutely amazing. Now, all that being said, this Detroit team is in disrepair on defense. They're down 6 defensive linemen. They lost 4 linebackers. Now they're going to get Anzalone back. I don't know whether or not he can play coming off the broken forearm. He's got a plate in his arm. He's practiced this week. And they lost 2 cornerbacks led by Carlton Davis. So they're a shell of what they were defensively. And do they have enough people who can make enough plays against Darnold, Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and whichever tight end they're going to throw to? And then, by the way, that is Aaron Jones running the damn ball down your throat. So Minnesota's got an awful lot of guns here. I think Minnesota wins this game, which then puts Detroit on the road. And as I said, I screwed around with calculus this morning and screwed it up. But the potential wild card weekend games in the NFC could have Philadelphia against Jordan Love in Green Bay. How good would that be? The Rams against Jaden Daniels in Washington. How cool would that be? And if Baker Mayfield makes it, Baker against Jared Goff, Detroit Lions. How cool will the NFC wildcard weekend be, just like the AFC games?
Well, and you know what? You mentioned the Eagles potentially taking on the Packers. Eagle fans will be in a very strange situation of, I think, cheering for the Dallas Cowboys this weekend, because if the Cowboys win and the Packers win, the Packers will then move into the 6th seed, and Philly will get Washington, who's had an unbelievable season. But, man, those 3 teams from the NFC, I think you could argue, are 3 of the top 4 for sure from the NFC North of the Packers in there. And there is a lot to be determined, with some of the other auxiliary games. But even the Washington-Dallas game will have an effect on it. Now, we're going to finish up Week 18 and get ready for the playoffs for some teams. Everyone else on to next year. Lee, how many pink slips are going to be handed out on Monday or Tuesday after the regular season is finished?
The words of the day are Black Monday. That's what it's called. We got 3 coaching openings right now. I got to believe there's going to be 3 or 4 more, maybe effective on Monday. And then that leads to the speculation, who is going where as a head coach? Well, the Bears' job is open. I think the Bears' job comes down to Ben Johnson, bright light coordinator from Detroit, or Pete Carroll, who's openly expressed wanting to go to Chicago, and this is a guy that's got a world of experience and is highly regarded. You got the Jets job that is open. They're interviewing fast. They interviewed Ron Rivera yesterday. The day before, they interviewed Mike Vrabel. I think one of those two guys, based on their ability to put in place a really strong culture and build toughness in football teams, one of those guys winds up with the Jets. New Orleans needs a head coach. Brian Flores, Minnesota defensive coordinator, could be a candidate there, even though he's suing the National Football League for discrimination. And here's a wild card name that's surfaced. I've been told that John Gruden has made contact with New Orleans because John Gruden had a relationship with Derek Carr. And John Gruden wants back in the NFL. Gruden, of course, is suing Roger Goodell in the NFL for the leaked emails. I don't know whether or not he gets consideration, but I hear Flores or Gruden, if with lawsuits notwithstanding, might be in New Orleans. And then we go from there. Is Jacksonville going to fire their coach and general manager, Doug Paterson? Who survives? Who gets swept out? New York Giants are just an utter disaster. You got the Raiders, and the storyline with the Raiders situation, Hustler, is Tom Brady's going to have input with Mark Davis as to what to do with his coach, Antonio Pierce, keep him or cut him loose, and have input as to what the hell they're going to do to solve the quarterback crisis. The Raiders could be the third one to have an opening. And the weirdest story, it's the one that surfaced in the last 48 hours. The 49ers are having a 6-10 season ravaged by injuries. And there seems to be an undercurrent of feeling that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch might not be the right fit. And now there's a theory, would Shanahan be traded? Teams are calling San Francisco and offering a first-round draft pick to hire Kyle Shanahan from the 49ers. Now, Jed York, the owner, said yesterday, no, we're not entertaining any thoughts about splitting up John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan. We just got to get our players back healthy. So, like I say, I think there's at least 3 more openings, maybe even a 4th. We could have 7 by breakfast on Tuesday, jobs to be filled. So it's going to be fascinating.
You mentioned Vrabel, and he will be somewhere. I think whoever gets him is going to have an incredible coach for the long term. Still think Tennessee made a mistake moving on from him. But we have heard that he actually wants to work for the New England Patriots. They don't have an opening at this point. There is a question as to whether Gerard Mayo is going to be returned. If they lose, they get the number 1 pick. Winning would screw that up. It's a very weird scenario for the Patriots in this spot. And there has been rumors that he's actually using this Jets opportunity to sort of put the squeeze on New England. What do you make about that? Because, I mean, he is a Patriot. I mean, we remember him as one of the greats during that incredible Super Bowl era in Foxborough.
Well, I think Robert Kraft is really torn because he likes Jared Mayo.
Yeah.
And Mayo was his hand-picked guy with Belichick's approval in the final couple of years when Belichick was coach, general manager, and ran everything on the football side. But Kraft has taken a lot of heat. The Boston media has just been brutal. You look, Hustler, I swear, just go online and punch up New England Patriots depth chart. Please tell me, outside of the quarterback, Drake May, do they have any players? Do they have any game changers? Do they have any playmakers? That's the end result of Belichick's poor performance as an executive and as head of football ops over the final group of years post Tom Brady. You know, their record after Brady has left is 31-53, and they have nobody on that roster that you say, wow, outside of the kid quarterback, Drake May. So I think Robert Kraft is really torn. And if he wants to change the culture, maybe Vrabel is the guy, just based on Vrabel's track record of who he is, what he stands for, and his experiences. But they need players. They need lots of players. Now, they wind up with the first pick, second pick. You know, they're going to either take an offensive lineman, or they might take the Boise State running back, Ashton Genty, who's a stud. Or maybe they trade back and stockpile multiple picks. But they need lots of picks and lots of players, regardless of who the head coach is. So, yeah, like I say, it's going to be fascinating come Black Monday and who's got a job and who doesn't have a job effective on Tuesday.
You know, you mentioned the Patriots, and listen, they've done a lot of things well. The one thing that they are maybe the worst in the NFL at is drafting receivers. And I was just looking up the trade up that the Chargers made to move from, 37 to 34 to grab him. The Patriots then took Jalen Polk and some other guy that hasn't had a catch all year. And with that other pick at 137, the one that they kind of had to take to move down, they grabbed Terheeb Still, who's been an unbelievable cornerback for them so far. It just seems some teams kind of get it, and the Patriots, despite all of their winning in the past, just have a real tough time from a drafting perspective on getting those weapons. And you're gonna, I mean, listen, if you got your quarterback, that's great, but if you have no one for him to throw to, that stunts an offense pretty significantly.
And you can't protect them. And by the way, they can't run the bleeping football. Yeah, it's a bad combination around the kid quarterback. I was really impressed. I watched closely last week when the Chargers beat New England. And Drake May just stood in there. He took a lot of heat, took a lot of shots, made a lot of plays, threw one interception. I think he's a stud. He just doesn't have very much to work around. And you talk about the word, the word you're getting to is screw up. How about the Raiders? The Raiders have no talent at all on the offensive side of the football. No quarterback. They let the running back go to Green Bay. They traded the wide receivers. They have nothing. And they were in line to get either the first or second pick. And they go out and they win 2 meaningless games. And instead of drafting 1 or 2 or going to the final weekend with a potential draft 1 and 2, they're now at number 10. They can't even lose correctly. And this is a franchise that's had 2 winning seasons. Think about this, 2 winning seasons in 22 years. They are 100 games under 500 as a team record since 2003. Think about that. And they still don't have a quarterback because now they're not going to draft 1 or 2. We don't know who the coach is going to be. We don't know if the general manager is going to survive. We do know that Tom Brady's going to have input. So this is going to be a fascinating offseason.
No doubt. Hey, Lee, quickly before we go, I meant to ask you this before, and then we got talking about the big game between the Vikings and the Lions. Sam Darnold's had this incredible renaissance. How do you see things playing out? I mean, it's the biggest topic in Viking land outside of the game, of course, is do they re-sign him? Do they franchise tag him, keep him for one? There's a number of people saying, well, you know what? Just sign him and trade J.J. McCarthy. He's probably better than any of the quarterbacks in the draft right now. We'd get you big capital back. Very unique situation. I guess a good problem to have for the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, it is. There's going to be a big pay hike, though. I mean, he earned $10 million on this one-year deal. But I was told that they're asking, the talks have already begun, they're asking for 35. So go to 10 to 35. But Minnesota's got enormous cap space. Minnesota has got its receivers signed under long-term contracts. So they've creatively found room to be able to do this. McCarthy, you got to put a question mark next to his name right now because we're coming off 2 meniscus surgeries in less than 1 calendar year, and he's a rookie who hasn't learned very much, hasn't played very much. So, I don't think you're going to get a first-round draft pick for J.J. McCarthy. Maybe you get a second, maybe you get a third. But if you're going to commit that kind of bank to keep Sam Darnold, and then you got the Daniel Jones situation that I assume he's probably going to leave and go be a free agent somewhere else and try to get a starting job at another club. If you commit to keep Darnold, then probably you're going to move J.J. McCarthy, or maybe McCarthy is your backup guy because you can't get fair value. You hate to give up on a number 1 pick.
Fair value? I bet they get a top 10 pick for him.
No, he's coming off double knee surgery. I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I don't think he's going to get traded, but we maybe will have to have a little side wager on that because, I mean, listen, I think most teams, like right now, if you're a quarterback needy team in the top 10, I think they would rather have J.J. McCarthy than Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. And there's a big drop-off after those guys. Like, this is not a quarterback-rich draft, and we know quarterbacking is everything in this league.
All I know is you're going to owe me a 1919 pale ale when we're done with this because you're talking out your ears. You don't know what you're talking about. J.J. McCarthy is unproven, and he's coming off 2 meniscus surgeries, and there's a big learning curve directly ahead of him. And I want a frosted glass and a piece of Boston pizza with the 1919 ale.
I stand by this take, Hacksaw. I stand by it. Hey, huge weekend. I know the website's rocking. Of course, YouTube. LeeHacksawHamilton.com. It was fun checking in on with the old Canada crew after our show yesterday. Give a quick plug on what you got coming up heading into the final weekend and, of course, Black Monday.
Well, obviously, all things National Football League. My website is all written, leehacksawhamilton.com. If you check it every morning, you'll be the smartest guy in Winnipeg, maybe even smarter than the host of that podcast, Winnipeg Sports Talk. But check the website every morning. Get the chance. My YouTube channel is up. We put a ton of stuff on it. We're obviously covering NFL. We're going to cover Black Monday. This side of the border, college football playoffs are a huge topic. We've got baseball free agency. We do a lot of NBA stuff. I do write a lot about the NHL. Apologies about my Ducks beating the Winnipeg Jets.
I didn't want to go there today.
God, by the way, now you owe me a second 1919 IPA ale.
Hey, plucky team. The last 3 games, they've beaten the Oilers, they've beaten the Devils, and then had that comeback win in OT last night. Tough matchup tonight going up against the Oilers in Edmonton. But, hey, it's a young team. That Leo Carlson's a stud, too. And
yeah, maybe they're turning the corner. They've had a lot of bad hockey. They've been force-feeding all their kids, so maybe they're going to arrive. Tell you what, the other guys here in Southern California, LA Kings, they have arrived.
Yeah, well, you know what? A week today, the Kings are in town, so we can touch on that when you join us then. Lee, enjoy the final week of the regular season. We'll talk to you next week and get ready for playoffs.
Regards to everybody in old Canada and the North, and we'll chat with you next Friday. Thanks, Hustler. Have a great sports weekend.
Thanks, Saw. There he is, the legend himself, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel and, of course, the website. He's not joking. It is the best 15 minutes of your day, and Lee is all over it. Remo, I particularly love Lee's site every year on the Black Monday, the write-ups that he does on all of the teams. And listen, for a lot of football fans, they're just fired up for the Super Wildcard weekend. But for more than half the league, it's on to next season. And I think this offseason and this upcoming week actually is going to be really interesting, especially when it comes to the proverbial coaching carousel.
Yeah, Week 18 always very interesting, especially for those of us who are still playing fantasy or doing prop betting. The number of quarterbacks starting Week 18 that probably wouldn't be starting in weeks 1 to 17. Or do we have a Josh Dobbs sighting with the 49ers? I haven't dived in too closely because, it changes every day who's playing, who's not. But very interesting. I am very, very excited for this Sunday night game, though. What a game,
dude,
with the Vikings and the Lions. And I got to say, this has happened in the past where, like, the Seahawks were winning the NFC West when it was terrible with
7-9.
Matt Hasselbeck. They got to change it. You can't have fighting for the division or going on the road being in 5th place. Or, fighting for first and the bye and going. It is dumb. If this was WWE, the commissioner would step in, bring in Jack Tunney, Sergeant Slaughter, step in and make a change. You can't have this. Everyone's watching it. It's not right. Doesn't make any sense. You can't have the second best team in the NFC going on the road in a playoff game. It's wrong.
The road for the entire playoffs. I mean,
yes.
Assuming that the 6 and 7 seeds don't win.
That's why divisions suck.
Last call for marbles, everybody. If you're just popping in, you're late, but you got a second, put in exclamation mark marbles. Remis will wrap that up in just a minute and we'll get going. But let's get to the Coolbet lines. And we will start off with that Viking-Lion game because it is going to be the highlight of the weekend for NFL fans. The final game of the regular season with so much on the line. The game is in Detroit. The Lions are 3-point favorites over the Minnesota Vikings. I've seen 2.5s out there. Coolbet, though, if you're taking the Vikings, +3 at -116. And the Vikings to win the game and win the NFC and the NFC North, +125. Lions, -147. But Remo, how about that total? 56.5. I am positive that that's the highest total of any game in the entire regular season.
Yeah, we haven't really had those big totals. There was that one game, the Bengals, which went crazy. I mean, you have the Lions offense. We've seen them go nuts. Minnesota as well. Sam Darnold, he can chuck it. So it's in a dome. And again, you've seen so many games this year, Huss, with bad quarterbacking. And there's been some questionable games this year. I mean, I was looking at the list of who's playing, like Dolphins,
Well, how about this?
Raiders.
Just go right to the top of the NFL list.
Yeah.
The Cleveland Browns are 20-point underdogs against the Ravens. I believe Bailey Zappi is getting the start for Cleveland. I mean, 20 points is 20 points. I may just on principle take the 20 and see what happens. The Ravens do want to win this game to ensure that they win their division and stay in the 3 seed. They shouldn't have any problem doing that. Whether they call the dogs off or keep lighting them up, I guess we will see. That game is early tomorrow. That's a Saturday afternoon game, 3:30. And then tomorrow night at 7, Joe Burrow, the Bengals, Russell Wilson, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers 2-point home underdogs. And as I said to Lee, I kind of think there's been a little bit of an overreaction to these last 3 games by Pittsburgh. I mean, did anyone expect them to beat Philly, the Ravens, or the Chiefs? I didn't. But the Bengals are, listen, they've got gaudy offensive numbers. They're a very mid team. They're 8-8. They shouldn't be in the playoffs. So, I don't know. Interesting games tomorrow. And then a full slate of games. The key ones, Washington needs to win for the 6th seed. They're -6.5. The Packers looking to take that 6th seed. They're 10-point favorites at home to the Bears. Washington is in Dallas, by the way. Other important games, the Bills 3-point favorites against the Patriots. Josh Allen's going to start, play a couple plays just to keep his streak going. Patriot fans do not want to win, so they can pick number 1. The Eagles are 2.5-point favorites against the Giants. The Buccaneers, 14-point favorites at home to the Saints. From a betting standpoint, there's some big-time incentives on the line, especially for Mike Evans for another 1,000-yard season. He needs 5 catches and 85 yards for a $3 million bonus. And if you note in the receiving yards, the Mike Evans total, oh my God, it's gone way up. It's literally gone up 17 yards since I did the lock shop earlier today. Now it's at 99.5. Well, that being said, he'll be seeing a ton of balls, and I do expect them to win. Other games, no Mahomes, no problem, but the Chiefs 10.5-point underdogs in Denver. Denver needs to win to clinch the playoffs. And the Rams resting all their guys at home. I like Seattle. Geno Smith's got a win bonus as well to get that win. Seattle's 6.5-point favorites against the Rams. Will be resting the starters. And Remis, will this be Aaron Rodgers' final game? The Jets at home in a pick'em to the Miami Dolphins, who could make the playoffs if the Dolphins win and the Broncos lose.
Man, I'm so sick of Aaron Rodgers. Is he still going to be going on Pat McAfee every week and have to hear about what he thinks about stuff? Because then,
asking people what their vax status is.
Yeah, I'm so done with him. He ruined the Jets. He did have some good games for fantasy. I was regretting not playing him that week against the Jaguars. Yeah, he had one. It was the first time he threw for over 300 yards. So, we don't need to talk about him anymore. He won, the one Super Bowl, and nice career. He had the big throw. Remember in that playoff game to Jeff Junis? So, it's been a pretty miserable year for the Jets, and that's probably going to be a terrible game with a 39-point team total. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Will the Giants take a chance on him? They need a quarterback. We'll see.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something, going across the hall at MetLife to the Giants?
They need a quarterback.
Cleveland needs a guy. It's not Deshaun. Can you imagine going from Deshaun Watson and all that drama to Aaron Rodgers with Deshaun on the roster?
They need to play Jameis, Cleveland. At least they're going to score points with him. You think DTR is going to throw for touchdowns? No.
It's Zappy time. Bailey Zappy.
Is he
quarterback
starting?
of the future? Yeah, Zappy.
No. Go with Jameis. We want to see points. You can't, you're going to score points. Yeah, he might throw some pick sixes and interceptions, but at least you'll have a chance of getting into the end zone. You're not getting in there with DTR and Bailey Zappi.
Hey, just before we get to marbles, and Rio, you can wrap that up and grab the list. We do have a couple of exclusive combo cards that we did in the lock shop. Our partner parlay is the Bucks minus 13.5 to smash the Saints. Seattle to take on the Rams B team and win by minus 6.5, so to win by 7. And then we've got the Vikings in the Sunday nighter plus 3.5. So we've got that extra half point. Plus 501, boosted to plus 576 by Evdog and the boys for us. So nice boost on that one. Tampa minus 13.5, Seattle minus 6.5, Minnesota plus 3.5. And then we're going with the incentive narrative on our house callers. Tony Pollard needs 2 touchdowns for a big bonus. They're playing the Texans. We think he'll get 1. So we've got a Tony Pollard anytime touchdown. We're going with a Mike Evans anytime touchdown. He's going to be seeing a lot of balls. And a rushing touchdown for Kyler Murray, who needs 1 for an incentive as well. That one boosted up to plus 766. Man, that's nice. It was plus 667 when we put it in. So basically an entire point we're getting on top of it. So that's there, top of the screen. Lock Shop house callers and the partner parlay. And check the exclusives later on. We'll probably put a couple more together, and we're going to do a same gamer for the Vikings and Lions. That'll be up at some point on the weekend. If you haven't played a Coolbet before, what are you waiting for? Get on over to coolbet.com. Use the promo code WST when you're making your first deposit. It'll hook you up with a 100% bonus up to $200. All right, well, there's only one thing left to do, Michael Remis, and that is award our first Marble Race hoodie of 2025 in a marble race. I'm looking forward to it. We've been waiting all year for this day, and the first Friday is here. Marbles is on. Let's fire it up with Tristan Rivers music before the festivities begin.
It's Friday!
All right, let's do this. It is time for marbles. And Remo, while you get that set up, I did want to mention to you folks that we were sold out of tickets for our next WST game. But I did inquire, and we have got some more seats that have opened up. So if you want to join us for the next WST game, it is on Thursday, the 16th of January. And I guess this is a C game, so it's $61 for the ticket, and it includes a beer or a beverage of your choice if you don't want a beer. So would love to see you join us. I know there's a couple people that were trying to get tickets, but they were sold out. We've added some more in Section 316. So jump on those right now, winnipegjets.com/WST. Get them before they're gone, and we'll look forward to seeing you. It should be a real fun Thursday night with the Kraken coming to town as the Jets continue this extensive road trip. All right, Reem, where are we going today?
All right, we got I put you in there, 215 marbles, which I picked a track here. I went through them. I picked it like half hour ago. I don't even remember the name. Good thing I wrote it down. It was animated. No, we used to go with this track builder, Dylan, that made a lot of good ones, but we've used all them, so I didn't go back, although they had some big hits. Animated Airy Adventure. I did test this one. I thought it was good. Some interesting eliminations. So I think there's some rocks that are exploding and destroy marbles on contact. So watch out for that obstacle.
All right. Well, hey, this is it. Hey, by the way, Coach Keezer's in chat needing your hoodie. If I have missed an email or anything like that, we've got them. So if you want, just either fire me a DM if you can on Twitter, if you're on X, if you can, Coach Keys.
I forward you your email.
Forward it to me, and you can pop by either on the weekend or after one of the shows next week, and we will get that set up. And of course, shout out to my pal Shippy and the gang over at Shipman Associates for the WST hoodies that we award to the winners. All right, I'm looking forward to the first marble race of 2025. Reem, let's do this.
215 marbles. Bam. Animated air adventure by Unicorn 0277.
The Unicorn, all right. Well, Dylan has raised the bar very high, so let's see what the Unicorn can do.
I know you're going to like the start. I think this is a traditional marble race start.
Oh, yeah, here we go. All right, 215 marbles. Good luck to everybody. It is time for the first time in 2025 on Winnipeg Sports Talk to officially start the weekend and drop the marbles on WST. Oh, yeah, I like these. We're going to go down and then back up. Whoa, Amanda shooting out of the gate. Nice start, although now a little slow. She's staying up. Oh, now down there. Who's going to come out first of this wild marble start? It looks like Velveeta. Velveeta is the first marble through, but it's anybody's race right now. Velveeta, a little bit of a lead on everybody, though. Going up into this this pipe or tunnel, and then into a slide. Well, Velveeta is definitely setting the pace today. Russ Lowen, fire the coach, Brant Batters. Oh, we've got our first two eliminations of the year. Farmer Brain and Puck and Hoots. Top roped, unfortunately. Oh, there goes Duck Dad. There goes the SMA. Chucker also done. Velveeta continuing to lead. Brant Batters, fire the coach, Wilf's World, all right now into the orb. Let's see who gets out first. Oh, there's Hustler. I'm in the mix. Oh, my God. If I won, that would be an all-time WST moment. All right. Who's in the mix here? Wilf J. Putz has entered the chat and is now in first place. David D. coming out on the... Oh, Ken 007 on the right side. Schickster as well. Oh, MC Stormy just got top roped. Ken and Schickster, it looks like. Oh, T. Will, WST Florida correspondent. What's up, T. Will? Is he back yet, or is he still?
I think he's on his way back, yeah.
What a nice run for T. Will. Very cool of him to join us despite being down on holidays. Ken 007, J. Putz, T. Will, Schickster. Right now, though, Ken leading the way and everyone just trying to catch up to Ken 007, although Ken 007 is kind of slowed down a little bit. And now all of a sudden, Jets, is that Jets number one?
Correct.
Jets number one is in first place. Jay Potts coming up in second, and then a big crew right behind.
Oh, my God.
What's going on? Adam Douglas now in the mix. This is a great track today. Okay, this is the end?
Yeah, this is it.
Here we go. Oh, this is anybody's race. Who's going to get it? Who will be the first winner of 2024? Is it going to be Jets number one? Yes. Wow, was that close? Daryl M., Candace Jane, Jeff Johnson, and Norm G. are top five today. Everyone's coming in. This was a good course. We got to remember this one, Reem. Bookmark that one. That was fun. We had tons of lead changes. A few people top rope. Not too many, though. Excellent choice of courses for our first one of the year. Oh my God, I'm just getting in now?
Yeah, you were in first.
I know. I don't know what the hell happened to me. It was well, at least I got to see myself in the mix at one point.
It's always a highlight seeing your name on there.
Oh yeah, you're right coming up here. Oh, the fire. The fire just got Amanda. She had that great start in the end. Although, as she'll be the first to tell you, a two-time marble race winner in 2024.
Look
So
how
the bar's
close
been
this
set.
was.
I know. It was incredible. What was it, 8?
307.577 for Jets. Number 1. Daryl was 307.858. And Candace Jane, 307.992. So all within like 0.5
And Jeff Johnson
seconds.
right there, too. Holy smokes.
Yeah, he's right there.
All right, Jets number 1, congratulations. Send us an email, winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com, and let us know what your hoodie size is. And you can pop by after a show next week and check it out. We'll just kind of run down here. Looking for, there's Rick Benson, the Herbster. You can see yourself, Amy Weeb, MVP. All caps Kyle, what's up? There's Tyson Ducharme, Rob Pepper. Looking for Bozeman. See who got it in the first head-to-head bet of the year. There's Bardo, Hockey Mom. Royal Sports, what's up, Royal? Michael Krugs, Mike Cochran. Okay, there I am right there, 173rd. Bravo Bry, Greg Hasby, Kabilis. And then everyone that got top roped or burnt, in Amanda's case, by the fire for taking her sweet time across the way. Great stuff, everyone. Fun. Just a weird week, Reem. As I said, I mean, it's felt like a different day every single day of the week, but I can confirm we just did a marble race. That means it's Friday, which means the weekend is here, and a couple days off for the crew, and then back at it on Monday. Connor, though, is back from his travels to NYC. He got to go to the game last night. He wasn't sure whether he was going to be able to make that happen, but was at Rangers Boston. He'll fire it up with Liz and Jacob Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Don't miss it. WST Sunday Live with more on the latest on the Jets coming out of tomorrow's game. I know Liz is going to be in the press box tomorrow, so she'll have that. And Connor will be back, and it should be fun. And then, of course, Monday morning, a little WST weekly review, setting you up for the return of the show Monday at 1 p.m. Reem, what's up for you for the weekend now that the holidays are all finished?
Yeah, I think kids' activities starting up. I got my daughter's swimming lessons Sunday. I don't know what we have. And we went tobogganing a couple times. Maybe try to squeeze some of that in if it's not too cold. It's going to be pretty cold, though. It's going to be pretty cold. I don't know. I don't think we have any plans. I think we'll have to see. Usually we got like so many birthday parties and activities, but we're kind of in between that right now. So,
ooh,
what's the weather? Don't tell me.
Today's high -19. Tomorrow's high -21.
That's bad.
Sunday -19. Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. It was funny. Remember when Max Hers was on with us last week? He said, well, it's actually not too bad. I said, yeah, just wait till you guys are back next week.
Yeah.
High of -21 for the Preds to get here.
Yikes.
That being said, it's not going down to -30 at night. Only -28 tonight. So anyways, bundle up. I'm glad you got your heat fixed. That's a key power move to make happen. I'm sure the kids and your wife wouldn't appreciate it having no heat when it's -20.
Yeah, I mean, it was, what was it? It was like 1 a.m. I'm about to go to bed, and I'm like, hey, it's really cold in here, and I wasn't sure if I should wait till the morning or call. I asked my friend ChatGPT. I said, ChatGPT, I'm here. It's 1 a.m. The heat in my house is off. I've got a wife. I've got 2 kids. Should I call? Should I call? And ChatGPT told me, yes. Do that. I had to
What
pay.
sort of a stupid question is that, human? Of course you should call.
I had to pay the bonus. So I'll give a shout out to WeatherTech. They came at 2:30 a.m. to my house and I've used them a couple times. So, yes, ChatGPT said many furnace repair companies offer 24/7 emergency services for situations like this, and gave me some.
Of course, you conferred with ChatGPT at 1 a.m. with the thermostat.
I'm big ChatGPT guy. Well, who else am I gonna ask? I was gonna text like my dad, but he's sleeping.
Oh my God, Bruce! Exactly.
Well, that's what ChatGPT's. I'm like, who would know the answer to this question if I should call or wait? And I said, my good friend, ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, shout out to WeatherTech for taking care of the Remis family last night when they needed it. And the heat is back, the kids are warm, and we're ready for the weekend. Who you got? Lions, Vikings?
It's in Detroit, hey?
Yep.
And they are, you know what? I'll go with the hometown. I'll say Minnesota, but probably Detroit.
I think both teams score 30.
It's going to be
Take
close.
the over on this one, even if it's 56.5. Going to be an amazing, amazing game. Cannot wait for it. We'll break that down. Of course, tomorrow, Jets, Red Wings. I know originally that was a 2 o'clock game on the schedule. It has changed. It's a 6 o'clock game. So govern yourself accordingly. And then back for a big week next week. The Jets are going to have Sunday and Monday off. Get a practice day in. Predators on Tuesday. And then a big back-to-back Friday and Saturday night. LA Kings, Colorado Avalanche before the Canucks come the following weekend. That is going to do it for us today, everyone. Great to hang out with you, and thanks so much for being here. Shout out to all of our sponsors. Thanks so much for making this show possible again. And we continue our countdown to our 1,000th show. Hit that subscribe button, by the way, if you haven't already. Tell a friend about WST. Have a great weekend. And join us on Monday, 1 p.m. Back at it, recapping the weekend for the Jets, the National Football League. It'll be Black Monday, so we'll get into some of that. And look ahead to Tuesday's game with the return of the Nashville Predators. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Thanks as always. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.